Hey guys, tonight we're going to drift back in time, not to the thunder of battlefields or the roar of planes overhead, but to a quieter, yet equally vital, front of World War II. We're going to pull on our imaginary Wellington boots and step into the worn, yet surprisingly resilient, shoes of a British woman who traded her city life for the muddy embrace of the countryside. You'll be planting potatoes, milking cows, and probably getting more mud on your face than you ever thought possible. You probably won't survive this without at least one minor existential crisis about the sheer volume of cow dung. But hey, that's part of the charm, right? So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And as always, let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You remember the posters, don't you? They were everywhere, plastered on every available surface, competing with the smudgy headlines of the daily papers. Your country needs you, they declared, but not for the usual military fare. No, these particular posters featured cheerful, rosy-cheeked women in practical uniforms, holding pitchforks with an almost alarming enthusiasm. They promised fresh air, hard work, and the satisfaction of a job well done. They promised purpose in a world that felt increasingly chaotic. And for you, a young woman living amidst the perpetual rumble of London's buses and the distant, unsettling wail of air raid sirens, it began to sound surprisingly appealing. Your days in the city had settled into a rhythm of quiet monotony, a sort of pre-war hum that had been abruptly shattered by the declaration of war. Perhaps you worked in a bustling office, the clatter of typewriters a constant backdrop to your thoughts, or maybe you toiled in a factory, the rhythmic thump of machinery dictating your movements. Either way, the air was thick with the scent of coal smoke and the distant, metallic tang of wartime industry. The news reports, delivered in grave tones over the wireless, spoke of ships sunk, cities bombed, and the ever-present threat to Britain's lifeline, its food supply. Rationing had tightened its grip, a constant, low-level anxiety that gnawed at the edges of every meal. Sugar, butter, bacon, even the humble potato was becoming a precious commodity. You'd heard the government's urgent pleas for increased food production, the rallying cry for every available hand to help feed the nation. It wasn't just about patriotism anymore, it was about survival. The Women's Land Army, officially reformed in 1939 to help fill the void left by male farm workers joining the armed forces, was a name that began to crop up more and more frequently in conversations. At its peak, by 1944, this remarkable force of women would number over 80,000, working tirelessly across the British countryside. But back then, it was just a whisper of an idea, a nascent possibility. You'd seen the recruiting offices, perhaps even walked past one a dozen times, dismissing it with a polite, internal chuckle. Asterisk me? A farmer? Asterisk you, who knew more about navigating the labyrinthine London underground than you did about the difference between a turnip and a rutabaga. But the seed had been planted. The thought of trading the familiar, yet increasingly claustrophobic, city streets for open fields and fresh air began to take root. Was it a sense of duty? Absolutely. You felt the weight of the war, the need to contribute. But perhaps, if you were truly honest with yourself in the quiet moments before sleep, it was also a yearning for something more. An adventure, yes, but also a desire for a different kind of purpose, a tangible contribution that wasn't just about typing letters or assembling widgets. And let's be real, the idea of wearing trousers every day was a rather scandalous, yet undeniably liberating, thought for a young woman in those times. It certainly beat the endless struggle with stockings and skirts in a blackout. So one brisk morning, you found yourself standing hesitantly outside a recruiting office, a knot of nervous excitement tightening in your stomach. You filled out the forms, answering questions about your health, your background, and your willingness to get your hands dirty. The interviewer, a kindly but no-nonsense woman, looked at your soft, uncalloused hands and raised an eyebrow, a silent challenge in her gaze. You met it with a determined nod. "I'm ready for hard work," you declared, perhaps with more conviction than you actually felt. There wasn't much in the way of formal training before you were dispatched. A brief, almost comical, induction where you were shown a few diagrams of farm tools and given a stern lecture about the importance of punctuality. You were measured for your uniform, the distinctive green jumper, the practical brown breeches, oh, the breeches, sturdy boots that felt heavier than lead, and a wide-brimmed hat that seemed designed more for comedic effect than sun protection. You tried on the breeches for the first time, looking at your reflection in the mirror, feeling a strange mix of awkwardness and empowerment. They were certainly different. You couldn't help but wonder if you'd look more like a scarecrow than a land girl. Don't worry, the woman fitting you had chuckled. You'll get used to them. They're more practical than fashionable, dear, but fashion won't win this war, will it? The day of your departure arrived with a gray, drizzly dawn. The air in the city felt heavy, thick with the smell of damp pavement and the distant rumble of early morning traffic. You clutched your small suitcase, packed with the few personal items you were allowed, and made your way to the bustling railway station. The platform was a symphony of farewells, tearful mothers, stoic fathers, and friends offering last-minute advice or shared jokes. You hugged your own family tightly, promising to write, trying to convey a bravery you weren't entirely sure you possessed. They looked at you with a mixture of pride and apprehension, perhaps wondering, like you, just what sort of world you were stepping into. As the steam train hissed and shuddered, slowly pulling out of the station, you pressed your face against the window, watching the familiar cityscape recede. The tall terraced houses, the smoking chimneys, the endless rows of shops, all shrinking, becoming mere dots on the horizon. The rhythmic clackety-clack of the wheels on the tracks became a hypnotic lullaby, carrying you further and further away from everything you knew. The landscape outside gradually transformed. The urban sprawl gave way to scattered suburbs, then to more open spaces, fields bordered by ancient hedgerows and small clusters of cottages. The air through the open window began to smell different, fresher, cleaner, with hints of damp earth and something indefinably green. You saw sheep grazing placidly in fields, cows staring blankly as the train rushed past, and the occasional solitary farmhouse nestled amongst trees. It was a world you had only ever glimpsed from a distance, or perhaps read about in books. Now, you were hurtling towards its very heart. You tried to imagine what awaited you. Would the farm be large or small? Would the farmer be kind or gruff? Would you be living in a bustling hostel with dozens of other land girls, or in a quiet billet with a local family? The uncertainty was both daunting and exhilarating. You'd heard stories, of course, some romantic, some terrifying. Stories of backbreaking labor, of endless hours in all weathers, of hands blistered and aching. But also stories of camaraderie, of laughter, of a profound connection to the land. You knew, intellectually, that this wouldn't be a quaint countryside holiday. Historians still argue whether the initial recruitment drives truly conveyed the arduous physical demands of farm work, or if they emphasized the romantic ideal of rural life to attract volunteers. You certainly felt a bit of both as the train chugged along. As the afternoon wore on, the train slowed, eventually pulling into a tiny, sleepy station that seemed to consist of little more than a platform, a small brick building, and a single, bored-looking porter. The air here was utterly different from London, quiet, save for the distant bleating of sheep and the gentle rustle of leaves. The smell was rich and earthy, a mix of damp soil, hay, and something subtly animal. You stepped onto the platform, your heavy boots thudding softly, and took a deep, lung-filling breath. This was it. No more city smog. No more air raid sirens. Just the vast, silent embrace of the British countryside, waiting to put you to work. You were about to discover that a pitchfork was far less forgiving than a typewriter, and that the only siren here would be the farmer's wife calling you for tea. The train carriage jolts one final time, a weary sigh of metal and steam, before settling into a profound quiet. You step down onto the gravel platform, the air instantly feeling different. It's cleaner, certainly, but also thicker. Heavier with the scent of damp earth and something indefinable, something wilder than the city's exhaust fumes. This isn't just a new town, it's a new world. The station, a small, humble affair, seems to shrink even further as you scan for a familiar face, or indeed any face. There's only the distant bleat of a sheep and the whisper of wind through unseen trees. Your suitcase, which felt perfectly adequate an hour ago, now seems ridiculously flimsy, packed for a weekend jaunt, not a wartime agricultural crusade. You might even chuckle softly to yourself, a tiny, almost inaudible puff of air, thinking, well, this is certainly not Selfridge's. A battered, ancient-looking utility vehicle eventually rumbles into view, kicking up a plume of dust that smells faintly of diesel and something else. Manure, probably. The driver, a stout, weathered man with eyes that seem to have seen 100 winters, nods curtly. He doesn't offer a hand, but merely gestures to the back of the truck. You hoist your bag, a little more awkwardly than you'd hoped, and clamber in. The journey is short but feels vast. The narrow lanes twist and turn, hedgerows blurring into a green tunnel. You pass fields, endless stretches of green and brown, dotted with sheep that barely look up, utterly unconcerned with the war raging across the channel. It's a stark, almost unsettling peace. And then the farm. It doesn't burst into view so much as slowly reveal itself, like an old painting unfurling. First, the roof of a barn, then a cluster of chimneys, and finally, a sprawling, haphazard collection of buildings that seem to have grown organically from the very soil. This isn't a neat picture postcard farm. It's a working, breathing organism. The main farmhouse, a sturdy stone structure with ivy clinging stubbornly to its walls, looks as if it's been rooted there for centuries. Its windows, small and deep-set, seem to watch you, assessing your arrival with ancient, quiet wisdom. You can almost feel the generations of hands that have touched these stones, tilled these fields. It's a little intimidating, a little awe-inspiring, and profoundly, utterly different from anything you've ever known. The vehicle grinds to a halt in what can only be described as the farmyard. It's less a yard and more a controlled chaos of mud, straw, and life. Your first sensory assault is the smell. Oh, the smell. It's a rich, earthy symphony of manure, damp hay, animal warmth, and something green and growing. It's not unpleasant, not exactly, but it is present. It clings to the air, a constant, undeniable reminder of where you are. You take a slow, deep breath, trying to acclimate, half expecting your city lungs to stage a protest. They don't, surprisingly. Perhaps they're just too shocked to complain. As you step down, your sensible shoes immediately sink a little into the soft ground. You look around, trying to take it all in. Chickens, plump and self-important, peck industriously at the ground, their clucking a low, rhythmic murmur. A scruffy border collie, its tail giving a tentative wag, watches you with intelligent, curious eyes from beneath a shaggy fringe. In the distance, you hear the lowing of cows, a deep, resonant sound that seems to vibrate through the earth itself. And a pig. You definitely hear a pig. A very loud, very enthusiastic pig. It sounds like it's having a minor existential crisis, or perhaps just a very good snack. To your left, a cavernous barn looms, its wooden doors wide open, revealing stacks of golden hay that reach almost to the rafters. The air inside is thick with the scent of dried grass and dust motes dancing in shafts of sunlight. You can almost feel the warmth radiating from within, a cozy, comforting warmth that promises shelter and sustenance. Adjacent to it, a smaller, older stone building, perhaps a stable, houses the gentle snuffling of unseen horses. Their presence is a quiet hum, a steady breath in the background of the farm's symphony. You notice the tools, too. Leaning against a shed, a collection of spades, forks, and hoes, their wooden handles smoothed by countless hands, their metal blades dulled by honest work. They look heavy, substantial, utterly unlike the delicate gardening implements you might have seen in a shop window. This is serious equipment, made for serious toil. And then there's the tractor. Or rather, a tractor. It's parked somewhat haphazardly near a pile of logs, its paint faded, its metal worn. It looks less like a machine and more like a sleeping beast, ancient and powerful, waiting patiently to be woken. You eye it with a mixture of apprehension and a strange, nascent curiosity. Will you really be driving that? You've only ever driven a bicycle, and even that was a bit wobbly on Tuesdays. A woman emerges from the farmhouse, wiping her hands on a worn apron. She's perhaps in her late 40s, with kind but tired eyes and a smile that crinkles the corners. This must be Mrs. Davies, the farmer's wife, your new de facto mother figure. She offers a simple, "Welcome, dear. Come in, you must be famished." Her voice is soft, lilting with a regional accent that's unfamiliar but comforting. You follow her into the farmhouse, leaving the cacophony of the farmyard behind, but the smells, oh the smells, they seem to follow you, a persistent memory of the outdoor world. Inside, the house is warm, smelling of wood smoke and baking bread. It's cluttered but cozy, a lived-in space that speaks of generations. You catch a glimpse of a large, well-scrubbed kitchen table, ready for a meal. Mrs. Davies leads you to a small, simply furnished room upstairs. It has a narrow bed, a chest of drawers, and a window that looks out over the fields you just drove through. The view is breathtakingly expansive, a patchwork quilt of green and brown stretching to the horizon. It's so different from the cramped, brick-walled views of your city home. Here, the sky feels bigger, the air fresher, the silence more profound. You unpack your meager belongings, placing them in the drawer, feeling a mix of trepidation and a strange, quiet excitement. This is it. This is your new reality. You're no longer a city girl, but a land girl. And as you stand there, looking out at the vast, unfamiliar landscape, you realize how truly essential your role here is. Historians still debate the true extent to which the public at large fully appreciated the contribution of the Women's Land Army during the war, often overshadowed by the more visible roles of women in factories or the armed forces. But standing here, seeing the sheer scale of the land that needs tending, the animals that need care, you feel it instinctively. This is vital work. Many of these farms, particularly the smaller, family-run ones like this, were struggling to maintain production with so many men away fighting. The land girls, often city-bred and completely inexperienced, stepped into a massive void. It's a little-known fact that some farmers, initially skeptical of these town girls and their ability to handle the rigors of farm work, would sometimes deliberately assign them the toughest, dirtiest tasks, expecting them to quit. But they rarely did. You take another deep breath, letting the quiet of the room settle around you. The distant clucking of chickens, the occasional low of a cow, the gentle creak of the old house. It's a symphony of rural life, a world away from the sirens and streetcars you left behind. Your new home, a blend of ancient rhythms and wartime urgency, is ready to embrace you. And you, surprisingly, are ready to embrace it back. The deepest part of the night still clings to the air, a cool, velvet blanket that presses against the small, unfamiliar window of your new room. You are adrift, suspended in that sweet, heavy sleep that only comes after a day of utterly new, physically demanding experiences. Your muscles, still humming with the memory of the previous day's unaccustomed labor, are finally at peace, sinking into the lumpy but surprisingly comfortable mattress. The world outside is hushed, save for the occasional soft rustle of leaves against the pane, or the distant, almost imperceptible sigh of the wind through ancient trees. It's a profound quiet, so different from the city's perpetual hum, that it feels like a physical presence, a gentle hand pressing down on the world, encouraging slumber. Then gradually the quiet begins to shift. It's not a sudden jolt, but a slow, almost imperceptible brightening that filters through the thin curtains. A pale, pearlescent glow begins to outline the window frame, chasing away the deepest shadows from the corners of your small room. You don't open your eyes immediately. Instead, you sense it, a subtle lightening behind your eyelids, a shift in the quality of the darkness. It's the first whisper of dawn, a promise of light slowly unfurling across the slumbering countryside. A sound breaks the silence, not harsh but insistent. It's a distant, guttural moo, not the mournful cry of a lost soul, but a contented, perhaps expectant, bovine bleat. It's followed by another, closer this time, and then a chorus of smaller, less defined chirps and tweets. The birds are stirring, their tiny, feathered bodies shaking off the night's chill, preparing for their own daily symphony. And then the unmistakable, full-throated, utterly unapologetic cock-a-doodle-doo of a rooster. It's less an alarm clock and more a declaration of war on sleep, a feathered drill sergeant barking orders at the rising sun. Honestly, you think if that rooster had a snooze button, you'd be pressing it with extreme prejudice right about now. But alas, no such luck in the rural idyll. You stir, a slow, deliberate stretch that feels both incredibly satisfying and profoundly painful. Every muscle seems to protest, a symphony of minor aches and unfamiliar stiffness. Your shoulders, your back, your legs, they all chime in with their own unique complaints. It's the kind of ache that promises a new kind of strength, but right now, it just feels like you've wrestled a particularly stubborn badger in your sleep. You sigh, a soft exhalation that puffs out into the cool morning air. Your eyes flutter open, adjusting to the dim light. The room is still shrouded in a delicate twilight, but you can now make out the simple wooden furniture, the floral wallpaper, the sturdy boots you left by the door. The air is crisp, carrying the faint, earthy scent of damp soil and something else, a clean, farm-wise smell, perhaps hay or livestock, that is slowly becoming less alien and more a part of your new reality. You pull the thin wool blanket higher, savoring the last vestiges of warmth before the inevitable chill of the morning truly sets in. This is it. This is your new normal. No more lie-ins until the sun is high, no more leisurely breakfasts with the morning paper. Your schedule is now dictated by the rhythms of the farm, by the needs of the animals, and by the relentless march of the seasons. It's a stark contrast to the urban routine you left behind, where the loudest sound was a milk float or a distant bus. Here, the very earth seems to pulse with life, demanding attention from the moment the first light touches the horizon. You push yourself up, slowly, carefully, sitting on the edge of the bed. Your feet meet the cold linoleum floor, sending a little shiver up your spine. You reach for your thick wool socks, fumbling a little in the dim light. Ah, the daily triumph of finding two matching socks in the pre-dawn gloom. Truly, these are the small victories that fuel a land girl's spirit. You pull them on, then your sturdy, practical underwear and a thick vest. There's no vanity here, just practicality. You are a cog in a much larger machine now, a vital part of the war effort, and comfort and utility are paramount. As you dress, you reflect on the sheer scale of the operation you've joined. By 1943, the Women's Land Army, or WLA, had swelled to over 80,000 members, a truly remarkable feat considering their crucial role in ensuring Britain's food security during World War II. These women, many like you from urban backgrounds, traded their city shoes for sturdy boots, their fashionable frocks for practical dungarees. They came from all walks of life, united by a common purpose, to feed the nation. And this early morning ritual, this quiet, personal awakening, was happening simultaneously in thousands of farmhouses across the country. You splash cold water on your face from the small basin, a bracing shock that immediately dispels any lingering sleepiness. The water, sourced from a well, feels incredibly fresh and clean. You dry your face with a rough towel, feeling your skin prickle with renewed circulation. A quick glance in the small, slightly tarnished mirror reveals a face that is already beginning to look a little different, a bit more weathered, perhaps, a touch more determined. The soft edges of city life are slowly being replaced by the sharper lines of rural resilience. You listen now more intently to the sounds filtering in from outside. The distant lowing of cattle has grown more insistent. There's the clatter of buckets, the rhythmic swish of a broom against stone, the muffled voices of others already awake and about their tasks. It's a symphony of rural awakening, each sound a tiny cog in the vast, complex mechanism of the farm. You can almost smell the brewing tea, the frying bacon, the promise of a hearty breakfast that will fuel the day's labors. One peculiar detail, something you'd never have imagined before arriving, is the sheer variety of makeshift alarm clocks. While some farms had proper clocks, many relied on the farmer's wife, or even the farmer himself, knocking on the land girl's doors at an ungodly hour. One quirky tidbit you heard was that some remote farms even had a dedicated knocker-upper, an elderly villager whose sole job was to walk around the village at dawn, rapping on windows with a long pole to ensure everyone was awake for their duties. It sounds like something out of a Dickens novel, but here, it's just another part of the daily rhythm. You pull on your sturdy uniform, the practical breeches, the thick shirt, the jumper. It's not exactly high fashion, but it's warm and allows for movement. You smooth down your hair, tying it back securely. No time for elaborate coiffures when there are cows to milk and fields to tend. You think about your friends back home, likely still tucked in their beds, dreaming of glamorous dance halls or the latest cinema releases. You chuckle softly. Your glamour now comes from the gleam of healthy soil on your boots and the satisfying ache of muscles well used. Truly, it's a life of unparalleled sophistication, isn't it? Just try not to get too much mud on your best uniform. It's a surprisingly difficult task. As you lace up your boots, the leather creaking softly, your mind begins to turn to the day ahead. You don't yet know precisely what tasks await you, but you know they will be physical, demanding, and utterly essential. You are here to replace the men who have gone to fight, to ensure the nation does not starve. It's a quiet, unglamorous form of warfare, fought with spades and hoes rather than rifles, but no less vital. Historians still argue whether the initial enthusiasm of land girls for these brutal early starts truly endured throughout their service, or if it was tempered by the sheer physical demands and the relentless monotony of some tasks. For you, right now, in this moment of pre-dawn quiet, there's a strange mixture of apprehension and a burgeoning sense of purpose. The apprehension is natural, the unknown always is, but the purpose, that's a new feeling, a solid anchor in the shifting tides of war. You stand, taking a deep breath of the cool, fresh air. It smells of earth and dewy grass, of wood smoke from a distant chimney, and the faint, sweet scent of blossoming trees. It's a scent that promises growth, life, and the bounty of the land. You walk towards the door, your footsteps soft on the wooden floor. The house is waking up around you, creaking and groaning as it stretches with the dawn. You can hear other land girls stirring in their rooms, the murmur of quiet voices, the soft click of latches. You are ready. Ready for the cool morning air against your cheeks, ready for the familiar ache of your muscles, ready for the smell of the earth and the feel of the animals. You are ready to step out into the first light of dawn, to meet the day's pastoral duties head-on, and to play your part in feeding a nation at war. The farm is calling, and you, a land girl in uniform, are ready to answer. The first true test of your new life isn't a grand, heroic gesture, but something far more fundamental, something that connects you to the very bedrock of existence, the earth itself. You're handed a spade, its wooden handle smooth from countless hands, its steel blade glinting dully in the morning light. And then you're pointed towards a patch of ground, seemingly innocent, but soon to become your adversary and your teacher. This, you're told, is where the turnips will go. Or perhaps the potatoes. It's all a bit of a blur, really, because right now all you see is compacted soil, a stubborn, unyielding canvas. Tilling, the foreman grunts, a man whose face looks like it's been weathered by 1,000 winters and 1,000,000 suns. We need to turn it over. Break it up. Let it breathe. He demonstrates, plunging the spade in with a practiced ease that makes it look like a child's game. You watch as the earth, dark and rich, folds over itself, revealing layers of damp, fragrant soil beneath. He makes it look almost elegant. A rhythmic art, indeed, like a slow, deliberate dance with the ground. You, however, feel less like a dancer and more like a very clumsy, very determined mole. You grasp the handle, the rough wood cool against your palm, and plant your foot firmly on the spade's shoulder, pushing down. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. It's like trying to dig through solid concrete. You push harder, gritting your teeth, leaning into it with all your weight. Finally, with a protesting groan from the earth and a rather undignified grunt from yourself, the blade bites in. There's a satisfying, tearing sound as the earth reluctantly gives way. Then the real challenge, lifting the heavy clod, twisting your wrist and flipping it over. It lands with a soft, damp thud, a dark, earthy lump on the still unturned ground. This is it. This is the rhythmic art of tilling the soil. And your first few attempts are less art and more awkward struggle. You quickly learn that it's not just about brute force. It's about leverage, about finding the sweet spot where the spade angles just right, about using your body weight efficiently. Your back, which just yesterday was accustomed to perhaps leaning over a counter or sitting at a desk, immediately registers its deep, profound disagreement with this new activity. Your shoulders ache, a dull throb that promises to escalate into full-blown rebellion by lunchtime. And your hands, oh, your hands. Even through the sturdy, slightly too big gloves provided, you can feel the grit of the soil, the vibration of the spade, the beginnings of what you suspect will be a rather impressive collection of blisters. It's not quite the manicured garden beds you might have seen in magazines. This is a full-body workout, where the gym floor is mud and the weights are clods of earth. Forget your fancy spin classes. This was the original high-intensity interval training, just with more worms. As you settle into the rhythm, push, lift, flip, step, repeat, the initial shock begins to subside, replaced by a strange, almost meditative focus. The sounds of the farm, which had seemed so alien on arrival, now blend into a comforting hum. The distant crow of a rooster, the gentle lowing of cows, the occasional clatter from the barn, they all become part of the backdrop to your personal battle with the soil. You notice the subtle changes in the earth as you turn it over. Some patches are stickier, heavier, clinging stubbornly to the spade. Others are crumbly, almost sandy, sifting easily through your fingers. You learn to read the soil, to anticipate its resistance, to adjust your technique accordingly. It's a slow, intimate conversation between you and the ground beneath your feet. And oh, the smell! The rich, earthy aroma of freshly turned soil is unlike anything you've ever encountered in the city. It's deep, damp, and full of life, a primal scent that somehow grounds you. You find yourself taking deep breaths, inhaling the scent, letting it fill your lungs. It's the smell of potential, of growth, of the promise of food. You notice the tiny, intricate root systems of weeds, now exposed to the sun, their delicate white threads a stark contrast to the dark earth. You see worms, fat and pink, wriggling frantically as their subterranean world is momentarily disrupted. You even find the occasional beetle, scuttling away in confusion. It's a whole ecosystem down there, and you, with your spade, are its temporary architect. One of the curious challenges you quickly discover is the sheer quantity of unexpected treasures that seem to reside just beneath the surface. Rocks, of course, are plentiful. Smooth, rounded ones that ping off your spade, sharp, jagged ones that snag the blade. You find yourself building small cairns of stones at the edge of the field, a testament to the earth's stony heart. Then there are the occasional bits of broken pottery, a shard of an old plate, or perhaps a rusty nail, relics of past lives, previous generations who worked this same ground. It's like a very slow, very muddy archaeological dig, except your prize is usually just another clod of dirt. You might even find yourself wondering if, in 100 years, some future archaeologist will unearth a rusty hair clip that fell from your hair while you were wrestling with a particularly stubborn clump of clay. This relentless turning of the soil was a core part of the Dig for Victory campaign, a national effort to maximize food production during the war. With shipping lanes threatened and imports drastically reduced, Britain had to feed itself. Every available acre, every garden patch, every bit of land that could possibly yield food was pressed into service. The Women's Land Army, often starting from scratch like you, were at the forefront of this agricultural revolution. You're not just digging a patch for turnips, you're digging for the nation's survival. It's a powerful thought, one that helps push through the growing ache in your lower back. The foreman, a man of few words but surprisingly keen observation, walks by. He doesn't offer effusive praise, but a slight nod, a grunt of approval, feels like a medal. "That's it," he says, his voice gravelly. "Keep that rhythm. Don't fight it, work with it." And slowly, painstakingly, you begin to understand what he means. The rhythmic art isn't just about the physical motion, it's about the mental surrender to the task. You stop thinking about the aching muscles and the endless expanse of undug earth. Instead, you focus on the satisfying crunch as the spade slices through the soil, the weight of the earth as you lift it, the gentle tumble as it turns. It becomes a dance after all, a slow, deliberate waltz with the land. You learn that the soil isn't just dirt, it's alive. It holds moisture, nutrients, and the promise of life. As you turn it over, you're aerating it, bringing fresh air to the microbes that live within, breaking up compacted layers, and preparing a soft, welcoming bed for the tiny seeds that will soon be planted. It's a fundamental act of creation, a laying of groundwork for future abundance. And you, a city girl who once thought soil was just something that got under your fingernails, are now a crucial part of this ancient cycle. There's a small, almost imperceptible shift in your perspective. The dirt beneath your fingernails, once a nuisance, now feels like a badge of honor. The dust on your uniform, once an annoyance, now tells a story of honest labor. You're not just a woman in uniform. You're a woman with dirt on her hands and pride in her heart. And speaking of uniforms, you quickly learn that those heavy-duty, lace-up boots provided by the WLA, initially feeling clunky and cumbersome, are absolutely essential for jobs like this. They provide the grip and the sturdy sole needed to push against the spade, protecting your feet from errant rocks and the general dampness of the field. You'd never thought much about footwear before, but now your boots feel like an extension of your will, digging deeper, pushing harder. Historians still debate whether the initial resistance from some traditional farmers to the land girls was more about gender roles, or a genuine skepticism about their lack of agricultural experience, or perhaps even a subtle class divide. But out here, with your spade in hand, battling a stubborn patch of earth, those debates feel distant. There's no room for such complexities when the simple, immediate task is to turn over this soil, to make it ready. The earth doesn't care about your background, it only cares about your effort. As the morning wears on, the sun climbs higher, and the dew evaporates, leaving the turned earth steaming faintly. You look back at the progress you've made. It's not much, perhaps a few square yards, but it's your few square yards. Each turned clod represents a small victory, a testament to your growing strength and perseverance. The gentle ache in your muscles is no longer a complaint, but a quiet hum of accomplishment. You've prepared the earth's embrace, and in doing so, you've begun to embrace this new, demanding, and surprisingly fulfilling life. The rhythmic art of tilling the soil has not just prepared the ground, it has begun to prepare you. As the sun climbs a little higher, casting longer, warmer shadows across the dew-kissed fields you just tilled, your morning routine gently pivots. The scent of freshly turned earth still clings to your clothes, but now, a different aroma begins to drift on the crisp air. It's a complex tapestry of sweet hay, damp straw, and that unmistakable earthy tang of, well, cow. You're heading to the cowshed, where a symphony of low moans and rhythmic chewing awaits. The cowshed, a sturdy, weathered structure of timber and stone, seems to hum with a quiet, bovine energy. As you step inside, the air is instantly warmer, a comforting cocoon against the lingering chill of dawn. The gentle clinking of chains and the soft rustle of straw are the primary sounds, punctuated by the occasional deep sigh from one of your four-legged colleagues. You grab your milking stool, a simple, three-legged affair that looks suspiciously like it might topple over if you so much as breathe too heavily, and your shiny metal pail. The pail feels surprisingly light now, a stark contrast to how heavy it will be by the time you're done. You approach your first charge, a large, placid dairy cow with eyes that seem to hold the wisdom of ages, or perhaps just a deep yearning for breakfast. You murmur a quiet greeting, a habit you've picked up from the seasoned farmhands. It feels a little silly at first, talking to an animal, but there's a certain calming effect to it, for both of you. You gently pat her flank, feeling the warmth of her massive body radiating through your fingertips. Her hide is surprisingly soft, like a worn velvet blanket. Positioning yourself on the stool, you tuck the pail between your knees. This is it, the moment of truth. You reach for the udder, surprisingly warm and yielding, and carefully grasp a teat. The first squeeze is tentative, then firmer. There's a faint hiss, a soft spray, and then a rhythmic pshh 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 as the milk streams into the pail, hitting the bottom with a surprisingly loud ping. It's a sound that will soon become as familiar and comforting as your own heartbeat. The rhythm is everything here. Squeeze, pull, release. Squeeze, pull, release. Your hands quickly find their cadence, a steady, almost meditative movement. It's a full-body workout you never anticipated. Your wrists ache, your forearms burn, and you quickly discover muscles you didn't even know existed. You wonder if professional arm wrestlers secretly train by milking an entire herd before breakfast. It certainly feels that way sometimes. You notice the distinct aroma of fresh milk, subtly sweet and creamy, mingling with the earthy scent of the cowshed. It's a smell of pure, unadulterated nourishment, a direct link to the land and the animals. Each cow has its own personality, you discover. Some are patient, standing perfectly still, almost as if they're enjoying the process. Others are a bit more fidgety, shifting their weight, or, in one particularly memorable instance, trying to lick your hair. You learn quickly to dodge the occasional swish of a tail, which, you discover, is a surprisingly effective, if somewhat pungent, fly swatter, and you're off on the fly. Milk was absolutely crucial during the war, often rationed, and the Women's Land Army played a massive role in keeping the nation's dairy supply flowing. Without you, those daily pint allocations for children and expectant mothers would have been even scarcer. You're not just milking cows, you're helping to ensure that vital nutrition reaches the tables of families across Britain, a quiet but profound contribution to the national effort. As the pail slowly fills, the ping becomes a softer, more muffled plop 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 as the milk level rises. You can feel the warmth emanating from the fresh milk, a comforting heat that seeps into your hands. It's a surprisingly intimate process, this connection with another living creature, providing sustenance directly from their body. You learn to listen to the cow, to understand her subtle cues. A slight shift in weight might mean she's uncomfortable. A deeper sigh might mean she's relaxed. There's a quirky tidbit you've heard from some of the older land girls. Many farmers believed that talking to the cows made them more docile and even increased milk production. You might find yourself humming a popular tune from the radio, or perhaps even confiding your deepest thoughts to the bovine audience. "Oh, Bessie," you might whisper, "if only you knew the trouble I had with that plow yesterday." Bessie, of course, offers no immediate advice, but her placid chewing seems to be a form of silent, comforting agreement. You might even learn to identify individual cows by the sound of their chew, which, honestly, is next-level bovine connoisseurship. The morning progresses, cow by cow. Each one is a new challenge, a new rhythm to find. Some udders are fuller, some teats are trickier to grasp. You learn to be patient, to be gentle, and to be persistent. Your hands are getting stronger, adapting to the repetitive motion. You begin to understand the sheer volume of milk required each day, each week, each month, to feed a nation at war. It's a staggering amount, and you are directly responsible for a tiny, yet vital, portion of it. You'll learn to appreciate the simple pleasure of a full bucket of milk, even if your forearms feel like they've been arm wrestling a particularly stubborn octopus. Historians still argue whether the traditional hands-on methods of dairy farming, like the ones you're mastering, were more efficient in terms of cow welfare and milk quality than the more mechanized approaches that would follow. Was the human touch truly superior, or just a necessity of the time? As you milk, you can certainly feel the direct connection, the immediate feedback from the animal. There's a sense of craftsmanship in it, a skill passed down through generations. You finish with one cow, gently pat her flank again, and move your stool and pail to the next. The process repeats, a cycle of gentle effort and tangible reward. The cowshed slowly fills with the rich, warm scent of fresh milk, and the rhythmic pshh 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 becomes a comforting backdrop to the rising sun outside. You wipe your brow with the back of your hand, a smudge of dirt, and perhaps a stray bit of straw now adorning your temple. Your back might ache a little, your fingers might be stiff, but there's a quiet satisfaction in the steadily growing line of full milk pails. By the time the last cow is milked, the cowshed is brighter, the sun now streaming through the high windows. The air is still warm, but the early morning chill has completely dissipated. You carefully carry your full pail, feeling its considerable weight, towards the milk churns. The milk is then strained and poured into these larger containers, ready for collection. Each pour is a testament to your morning's labor, a liquid gold that will nourish families. You clean your pail, your stool, and help tidy the cowshed, leaving it ready for the evening milking. The gentle mooing of the cows, now content and lighter, fades into the background as you step out into the full light of morning, ready for whatever the farm demands next. As the sun climbs a little higher, casting longer, warmer shadows across the dew-kissed fields you just tilled, your morning routine gently pivots. The scent of freshly turned earth still clings to your clothes, but now, a different aroma begins to drift on the crisp air. It's a complex tapestry of sweet hay, damp straw, and that unmistakable earthy tang of, well, cow. You're heading to the cowshed, where a symphony of low moans and rhythmic chewing awaits. The cowshed, a sturdy, weathered structure of timber and stone, seems to hum with a quiet, bovine energy. As you step inside, the air is instantly warmer, a comforting cocoon against the lingering chill of dawn. The gentle clinking of chains and the soft rustle of straw are the primary sounds, punctuated by the occasional deep sigh from one of your four-legged colleagues. You grab your milking stool, a simple, three-legged affair that looks suspiciously like it might topple over if you so much as breathe too heavily, and your shiny metal pail. The pail feels surprisingly light now, a stark contrast to how heavy it will be by the time you're done. You approach your first charge, a large, placid dairy cow with eyes that seem to hold the wisdom of ages, or perhaps just a deep yearning for breakfast. You murmur a quiet greeting, a habit you've picked up from the seasoned farmhands. It feels a little silly at first, talking to an animal, but there's a certain calming effect to it, for both of you. You gently pat her flank, feeling the warmth of her massive body radiating through your fingertips. Her hide is surprisingly soft, like a worn velvet blanket. Positioning yourself on the stool, you tuck the pail between your knees. This is it, the moment of truth. You reach for the udder, surprisingly warm and yielding, and carefully grasp a teat. The first squeeze is tentative, then firmer. There's a faint hiss, a soft spray, and then a rhythmic pshh, pshh, pshh as the milk streams into the pail, hitting the bottom with a surprisingly loud ping. It's a sound that will soon become as familiar and comforting as your own heartbeat. The rhythm is everything here. Squeeze, pull, release. Squeeze, pull, release. Your hands quickly find their cadence, a steady, almost meditative movement. It's a full-body workout you never anticipated. Your wrists ache, your forearms burn, and you quickly discover muscles you didn't even know existed. You wonder if professional arm wrestlers secretly train by milking an entire herd before breakfast. It certainly feels that way sometimes. You notice the distinct aroma of fresh milk, subtly sweet and creamy, mingling with the earthy scent of the cowshed. It's a smell of pure, unadulterated nourishment, a direct link to the land and the animals. Each cow has its own personality, you discover. Some are patient, standing perfectly still, almost as if they're enjoying the process. Others are a bit more fidgety, shifting their weight, or, in one particularly memorable instance, trying to lick your hair. You learn quickly to dodge the occasional swish of a tail, which you discover is a surprisingly effective, if somewhat pungent, fly swatter, and you're off on the fly. Milk was absolutely crucial during the war, often rationed, and the Women's Land Army played a massive role in keeping the nation's dairy supply flowing. Without you, those daily pint allocations for children and expectant mothers would have been even scarcer. You're not just milking cows, you're helping to ensure that vital nutrition reaches the tables of families across Britain, a quiet but profound contribution to the national effort. As the pail slowly fills, the ping becomes a softer, more muffled plop 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 as the milk level rises. You can feel the warmth emanating from the fresh milk, a comforting heat that seeps into your hands. It's a surprisingly intimate process, this connection with another living creature, providing sustenance directly from their body. You learn to listen to the cow, to understand her subtle cues. A slight shift in weight might mean she's uncomfortable. A deeper sigh might mean she's relaxed. There's a quirky tidbit you've heard from some of the older land girls. Many farmers believed that talking to the cows made them more docile, and even increased milk production. You might find yourself humming a popular tune from the radio, or perhaps even confiding your deepest thoughts to the bovine audience. "Oh, Bessie," you might whisper, "if only you knew the trouble I had with that plow yesterday." Bessie, of course, offers no immediate advice, but her placid chewing seems to be a form of silent, comforting agreement. You might even learn to identify individual cows by the sound of their chew, which, honestly, is next-level bovine connoisseurship. The morning progresses, cow by cow. Each one is a new challenge, a new rhythm to find. Some udders are fuller, some teats are trickier to grasp. You learn to be patient, to be gentle, and to be persistent. Your hands are getting stronger, adapting to the repetitive motion. You begin to understand the sheer volume of milk required each day, each week, each month, to feed a nation at war. It's a staggering amount, and you are directly responsible for a tiny, yet vital, portion of it. You'll learn to appreciate the simple pleasure of a full bucket of milk, even if your forearms feel like they've been arm wrestling a particularly stubborn octopus. Historians still argue whether the traditional, hands-on methods of dairy farming, like the ones you're mastering, were more efficient in terms of cow welfare and milk quality than the more mechanized approaches that would follow. Was the human touch truly superior, or just a necessity of the time? As you milk, you can certainly feel the direct connection, the immediate feedback from the animal. There's a sense of craftsmanship in it, a skill passed down through generations. You finish with one cow, gently pat her flank again, and move your stool and pail to the next. The process repeats, a cycle of gentle effort and tangible reward. The cowshed slowly fills with the rich, warm scent of fresh milk, and the rhythmic pshh 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 becomes a comforting backdrop to the rising sun outside. You wipe your brow with the back of your hand, a smudge of dirt, and perhaps a stray bit of straw now adorning your temple. Your back might ache a little, your fingers might be stiff, but there's a quiet satisfaction in the steadily growing line of full milk pails. By the time the last cow is milked, the cowshed is brighter, the sun now streaming through the high windows. The air is still warm, but the early morning chill has completely dissipated. You carefully carry your full pail, feeling its considerable weight, towards the milk churns. The milk is then strained and poured into these larger containers, ready for collection. Each pour is a testament to your morning's labor, a liquid gold that will nourish families. You clean your pail, your stool, and help tidy the cowshed, leaving it ready for the evening milking. The gentle mooing of the cows, now content and lighter, fades into the background as you step out into the full light of morning, ready for whatever the farm demands next. The warmth of the morning milking, the lowing of the cows, and the gentle clinking of pails slowly recede as the sun climbs higher, asserting its dominion over the vast, open fields. You emerge from the relative cool of the milking shed, blinking as the midday sun hits your face, already strong enough to promise a good sweat. The air shimmers above the distant hedgerows, and the very ground beneath your sturdy boots seems to radiate the heat it's absorbed since dawn. This isn't just a change in temperature, it's a shift in the farm's rhythm, a call to a different kind of labor, one that demands a more direct, physical engagement with the earth's bounty. Today, the fields are calling, specifically the expansive stretches of ripening grain, or perhaps the long, verdant rows of potatoes, their leaves a vibrant green against the darker soil. Let's imagine it's the grain, swaying in a gentle breeze, a golden sea ready for the harvest. Your muscles, still pleasantly warm from the morning's exertions, now prepare for a different kind of strain. You grab your tools, perhaps a long-handled scythe, its curved blade gleaming, or a simpler, more manageable sickle, designed for precision and repetitive motion. For many of you, these tools were as foreign as a Martian landscape just weeks ago, but now they feel less like alien objects and more like extensions of your own determined will. You step into the field, the tall stalks brushing against your legs, a soft, whispering sound like a secret being shared amongst the growing things. The sun beats down with an almost relentless intensity, making the air thick and heavy. A bead of sweat trickles down your temple, tickling as it goes, and you already feel the dust starting to settle on your skin, a fine, earthy powder that will cling to every surface by the end of the day. This is the true test of the land girl, not just the early mornings, but the sustained effort under the blazing sun, the relentless, repetitive motions that turn potential into sustenance. The first swing of the scythe is always a little awkward, a little stiff. You remember the farmer's patient instructions, the way he demonstrated the wide, sweeping arc, the precise angle of the blade to cut cleanly through the stalks without clogging. You adjust your grip, shift your weight, and try again. Swish. A satisfying rustle as a swathe of golden wheat falls, creating a neat row behind you. Swish. And again. The rhythm takes over, slow at first, then gaining confidence and momentum. It's a dance, really, between you and the field, a methodical, almost meditative engagement. Each swing is a contribution, each fallen stalk a victory against the gnawing uncertainty of wartime food supplies. You work alongside your fellow land girls, spaced out across the field, each creating their own path, their own rhythm. The only sounds are the rustle of the grain, the occasional grunt of effort, and the distant buzz of a lone bee. Conversation is sparse, saved for water breaks or when someone needs a hand with a particularly stubborn patch. There's a quiet camaraderie in this shared labor, a silent understanding that binds you together. You might catch a glimpse of another girl, her brow furrowed in concentration, her arms moving with a practiced grace that you aspire to. You wonder if she's thinking about the same things you are, the hot tea that awaits, the sheer volume of grain still standing, or perhaps the surprising tenderness in your shoulders that will inevitably set in later. As you work, the sheer scale of the task becomes apparent. This isn't just a garden plot, it's acres upon acres of vital food. You learn to tie the cut stalks into sheaves, binding them tightly so they can be easily gathered and transported. Your fingers, initially clumsy, become adept at the knot, quickly securing the bundles. You pile them up, creating small, golden monuments to your effort, waiting for the cart to come and collect them. It's hard, back-breaking work, the kind that makes you question your life choices from time to time. Ah, yes, you might think with a wry internal chuckle, this is exactly what I imagined when I signed up to serve king and country. More upper body strength than I ever thought I'd need. But then you look at the growing piles, the cleared ground, and a different kind of satisfaction washes over you. This manual labor, this direct interface with the earth, was crucial. During World War II, Britain was heavily reliant on imported food, and the U-boat blockade posed a severe threat to national food security. The Dig for Victory campaign wasn't just about small backyard gardens. It was about maximizing every available acre of agricultural land. The Women's Land Army, along with other agricultural workers, played an indispensable role in ensuring the nation didn't starve. You're not just cutting wheat, you're cutting a lifeline for a nation under siege. Every sheaf represents calories, strength, and resilience for families across the country. The sun continues its relentless march across the sky, and you feel its full force now. Your shirt is damp with sweat, clinging uncomfortably to your back. Dust coats your throat, making you cough, and you can feel the grit between your teeth. You take a quick swig from your water bottle, the lukewarm liquid a welcome, if not entirely refreshing, respite. You wipe your brow with the back of a gloved hand, leaving a smear of dirt and sweat. It's a badge of honor, really, though perhaps not one you'd wear to a tea party. Sometimes, a particularly pesky thistle or a cluster of stubborn weeds will try to trip you up, literally or figuratively. You find yourself battling not just the sheer volume of the harvest, but also the minor annoyances of nature. A rogue bee might buzz a little too close, making you jump, or a tiny field mouse might scurry from beneath a fallen sheaf, startling you momentarily. You might even discover a particularly lumpy potato, shaped vaguely like a famous politician, which provides a moment of shared, exhausted laughter with a nearby land girl. "Looks like old Winston's been buried here," one of you might quip, prompting a tired giggle. These small moments of levity are precious, brief respites from the relentless focus. The air around you fills with the sweet, earthy smell of freshly cut stalks and the dry scent of the sun-baked soil. It's a primal smell, one that speaks of ancient harvests and the timeless cycle of growth and sustenance. You feel a deep, almost spiritual connection to the land, an understanding that goes beyond simple labor. This isn't just dirt and plants. It's life, it's energy, it's the very fabric of existence. You are literally bringing forth the means of survival from the ground, with your own two hands. One quirky tidbit you might learn is about the sheer variety of crops some land girls were expected to master. It wasn't just grain or potatoes. Many units were also responsible for market gardening, growing everything from carrots and cabbages to more delicate soft fruits like strawberries and raspberries, each requiring a different harvesting technique and a different set of tools. Imagine going from swinging a scythe to delicately plucking berries, all in the same week. It was a crash course in agricultural versatility, often taught by grizzled old farmers who had seen it all and were now trying to impart decades of wisdom in a matter of days. As the sun begins its slow descent from its midday peak, casting longer shadows, you feel a growing sense of accomplishment. The field behind you, once a golden expanse, is now a mosaic of stubble and neatly stacked sheaves. Your back aches, your hands are sore, and every muscle protests with a dull throb. But there's a quiet pride swelling in your chest. You look at the fruits of your labor, the tangible evidence of your contribution, and for a moment, the distant rumble of war, the grim news from the wireless, all seem to fade. Here, in this field, under this sky, you are making a difference, one sheaf at a time. Historians still argue whether the Women's Land Army's contribution to food production was more significant than that of other groups, such as conscientious objectors or even German prisoners of war, who were also put to work on farms. Asterisk, but standing here, feeling the earth under your boots, seeing the vast quantities of food you've personally helped bring in, you have no doubt about the vital role you and your fellow land girls are playing. You are the hands of the nation, literally feeding the war effort from the ground up. The final few rows are the hardest, pushing through the fatigue, but the promise of a hearty lunch, followed by perhaps a brief, well-deserved rest before the afternoon's tasks, keeps you going. You might even find yourself humming a tune, a slightly off-key rendition of a popular song, just to keep your spirits up. You bend, you cut, you tie one last time. You gather the final sheaf, feeling its weight, its promise. You stand up straight, stretching your weary back, and survey the field. The golden bounty is gathered, secured, ready to be transported. The earth has given its generous yield, and you, a land girl, have been its diligent steward. You dust off your hands, feeling the lingering warmth of the sun on your skin, and turn towards the farmhouse, ready for whatever the afternoon brings, knowing that you have done your part for the nation, one golden stalk at a time. Your stomach rumbles, a gentle reminder that even the harvesters need to be harvested, so to speak. The sun, though still climbing, already possesses a determined warmth as you approach your next challenge. You've mastered the gentle art of the cow's udder, felt the rich soil yield beneath your hand, and gathered the earth's generous bounty with a quiet efficiency. But now, a different kind of beast awaits you. It stands in the corner of the field, a hulking silhouette against the morning sky, smelling faintly of oil and dried earth. It is, of course, the tractor. For someone accustomed to the quiet hum of a city tram or the gentle purr of a domestic sewing machine, this machine is an entirely different proposition. It's a Fordson N, perhaps, or a Ferguson, its metal skin scarred with the honest wear of countless seasons. You eye its massive, cleated wheels, taller than you are, and the complex array of levers and pedals that seem to promise either glorious progress or immediate, embarrassing mechanical failure. This isn't a gentle beast, it's a mighty one, designed to tame acres, not just individual plants. Your instructor, usually a man of few words, offers a gruff, almost reverent explanation of its inner workings. He points to the choke, the throttle, the clutch, words that sound like a foreign language whispered in the clatter of a workshop. He demonstrates how to start it, a process that involves a surprising amount of brute force and a prayer to the mechanical gods. You watch, fascinated and a little intimidated, as he cranks the handle with a practiced swing, the engine sputtering to life with a deep, guttural cough, like a sleeping giant roused from its slumber. The air immediately fills with the pungent, almost sweet scent of diesel, a smell that will soon become as familiar to you as the scent of damp soil after rain. Then, it's your turn. You climb up onto the high, hard seat, feeling the cool metal beneath your fingers, the worn leather of the steering wheel. The controls feel alien, stiff and heavy. You press the clutch, a surprisingly strong resistance meeting your foot, and fumble for the gear lever. First gear clunks into place with a sound that reverberates through the entire machine, a metallic sigh of readiness. You release the handbrake, a solid, satisfying thunk. And then the moment of truth. You slowly, tentatively, release the clutch, simultaneously applying a touch of throttle. The tractor shudders, lurches forward, and then, with an almost comical jerk, stalls. The silence that follows is deafening, punctuated only by the distant bleating of sheep. You sigh, a small puff of exasperation, and try again, and again, and again. It's like learning to walk all over, but with the added pressure of knowing that this particular set of legs weighs several tons and costs more than your entire childhood home. You begin to understand why some of the farmers initially scoffed at the idea of girls handling these machines. They were, in their minds, too delicate, too weak. Oh, how wrong they were. But persistence is a land girl's middle name, right after covered in mud. You adjust your grip, focus your gaze, and try to find that elusive sweet spot between clutch and throttle. This time, with a roar that vibrates up through the seat and into your very bones, the engine catches. The tractor lurches forward, not smoothly, not gracefully, but it moves. You're driving. A small, triumphant smile touches your lips, quickly wiped away by the dust that immediately begins to swirl around you. The first few hours are a masterclass in controlled chaos. You steer with a white-knuckled grip, trying to keep the furrows straight, but the tractor seems to have a mind of its own, veering slightly left, then right. The noise is immense, a constant, rattling roar that makes conversation impossible, and even coherent thought a challenge. You find yourself shouting instructions to yourself over the din, as if the tractor might actually listen. Left. No, right. Steady, steady now. It's a good thing no one else is around to hear your internal monologue, or they might question your sanity. As the morning wears on, however, a rhythm begins to emerge. You start to anticipate the tractor's movements, to feel the subtle shifts in the ground beneath its mighty wheels. Your foot finds the clutch pedal with less conscious effort. Your hand glides to the gear lever with newfound confidence. The steering, once a wrestling match, becomes a dance, albeit a very loud and dusty one. You learn to guide the powerful tractor across the vast fields, turning at the headlands with a wide, sweeping arc, ready to begin the next long, straight pass. The implement attached behind the tractor, a plow, a cultivator, or perhaps a harrow, becomes an extension of your will. You watch the earth respond, turning over in rich, dark waves behind the plow, or breaking into finer tilth under the cultivator's tines. It's a profound connection, this direct manipulation of the land on such a scale. You are not just planting or harvesting, you are shaping the very surface of Britain, preparing it to feed a nation at war. This mechanization was a critical factor during the war. Britain's tractor fleet increased significantly, from around 50,000 in 1939 to over 120,000 by 1945, a direct response to the urgent need for increased food production and the shortage of male farm labor. You are part of this quiet revolution. Lunch breaks are a welcome respite, a chance to stretch your aching muscles and wipe the grime from your face. You pull the tractor to a halt, the engine ticking and cooling, and climb down, feeling the ground solid beneath your feet after hours of vibration. You eat your simple sandwich, perhaps a hard-boiled egg, and sip from your water bottle, watching the heat shimmer above the freshly turned earth. The sheer scale of what you're accomplishing becomes evident from this vantage point, row after row of perfectly tilled soil stretching out before you, a testament to your growing skill and the tractor's relentless power. In the afternoon, the sun beats down relentlessly, and the dust becomes an ever-present companion. It coats your hair, your clothes, even finds its way into your teeth. You learn to tie a scarf around your mouth and nose, turning yourself into a rather fetching, if slightly apocalyptic, desert bandit. The constant drone of the engine lulls you into a meditative state, your mind focused solely on the task at hand, keeping the lines straight, ensuring an even depth, avoiding any hidden rocks that might cause a jarring jolt. There's a strange beauty in the monotony, a satisfaction in the repetitive motion that transforms the raw land. You might even find yourself humming along to the engine's rhythm, or mentally composing letters home, though the words are quickly lost to the roar. It's not exactly the glamorous image of wartime service often portrayed in newsreels, is it? No dashing uniforms, no dramatic battles. Just you, a behemoth of steel, and miles of dirt. Oh yes, the height of wartime glamour, covered head to toe in oil and dust, smelling faintly of diesel fumes. Perhaps you'll send a postcard home of a perfectly straight furrow and title it, "Wish you were here, not really." One quirky tidbit you might hear from an older hand is about the early days of tractor driving for women. Some of the very first land girls assigned to tractors found that the standard seats were designed for much larger men and were incredibly uncomfortable. There were even informal attempts at padding them with sacks or old blankets, leading to some rather inventive, if not entirely ergonomic, seating solutions. Your own seat, while firm, thankfully feels less like a medieval torture device. As the sun begins its slow descent, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, you bring the tractor to a final halt. The engine sputters, then falls silent, leaving an immense, ringing quiet in its wake. The sudden absence of noise is almost disorienting, like stepping into a vacuum. You climb down, your legs stiff, your body humming with residual vibrations. You look back at the vast expanse of land you've transformed, a canvas of rich, dark earth ready for planting. It's a profound feeling of accomplishment, a quiet triumph. Historians still argue whether the rapid mechanization of British agriculture, heavily reliant on the land army's willingness to operate these powerful machines, truly compensated for the vast number of skilled male agricultural workers who had joined the armed forces. But standing here, looking at the evidence of your own hands and the tractor's might, you know one thing for certain: you are playing your part. You are feeding Britain. And as you trudge back towards the farmhouse, the last rays of sunlight glinting off the silent tractor, you feel a deep, satisfying weariness settle over you, a comfortable exhaustion earned through honest, powerful work. The rumble of the engine might fade from your ears, but the steady beat of the land and your vital connection to it will carry you into dreams. The rhythm of the farm, you're discovering, isn't just about the grand, sweeping gestures of plowing or the urgent bustle of harvest. Sometimes it settles into something far more intricate, a quiet choreography of hands and wood, a task that demands both patience and a surprisingly artistic eye. Today, the farmer, a man whose hands look as gnarled and wise as the ancient apple trees themselves, guides you towards the orchard. You step into a world of twisted branches, a silent, skeletal forest waiting for its reawakening. The air here feels different, cooler, imbued with the faint, sweet scent of dormant wood and damp earth. Sunlight, when it manages to filter through the dense canopy above, dances in dappled patterns on the ground, illuminating patches of moss and fallen leaves. This isn't the open expanse of the fields, but a more confined, intimate space, where each tree feels like a unique individual with its own story etched into its bark. The farmer hands you a pair of secateurs. They feel solid and cool in your palm, a simple tool yet clearly designed for precision. He shows you how to hold them, how to angle the blade, how to make a clean cut that doesn't bruise the branch. Think of it like giving the tree a haircut, he rumbles, his voice surprisingly soft. You're not just chopping, you're shaping, encouraging new growth, making sure it has the best chance to bear fruit. He demonstrates, snipping away a thin, spindly twig that crosses another, then a thicker branch growing inwards, explaining that these are water sprouts or suckers, greedy for the tree's energy but unlikely to produce good fruit. You watch, mesmerized by the almost surgical precision of his movements. He points out the tiny, swollen buds that promise future leaves and blossoms, and the larger, rounder ones that are the fruit buds. Don't touch those, he warns with a twinkle in his eye, unless you want to be responsible for Britain's shortest apple pie season. You chuckle, a soft sound in the quiet orchard. It's a gentle reminder of the stakes involved, but delivered with kindness. Then it's your turn. You approach a young apple tree, its branches reaching out like hesitant arms. You take a breath, feeling a slight tremor in your hands. Where to begin? It feels like an immense responsibility, this act of shaping life. You recall his instructions: remove dead or diseased wood first, then anything crossing or rubbing, then branches growing inwards that would block light and air. You try to visualize the tree in its full, leafy glory, heavy with fruit, and imagine the path of the sunlight. The first snip is tentative. The secateur click, a surprisingly sharp, satisfying sound in the stillness. A small, thin branch falls to the ground. You pick it up, examining the clean cut, feeling a strange mix of accomplishment and apprehension. Was that the right one? The farmer nods, a small, encouraging gesture. You move to the next branch, and then the next, slowly finding a rhythm. This isn't about brute strength, you realize. It's about observation, about understanding the tree's natural inclination, and gently guiding it. You begin to see patterns in the way branches grow, how some reach for the light while others seem to shrink back. You learn to differentiate between the vigorous, upright growth of a water sprout and the more horizontally inclined, fruit-bearing wood. It's a quiet art, indeed, one that demands a deep connection with the plant itself. Sometimes, for thicker branches, you use loppers, those long-handled, powerful shears that make a deeper, more resonant thwack as they sever wood. And for the really stubborn ancient limbs, there's a small pruning saw, its teeth whispering against the bark before biting in, leaving a fine dust of fragrant wood. The smell, especially when you cut into a larger branch, is earthy and slightly sweet, a scent that will forever remind you of these peaceful, purposeful hours. You find yourself falling into a meditative state. The world outside the orchard, the distant rumble of lorries, the faint murmur of news on the wireless back at the farmhouse, all fade away. Here, it's just you, the tree, and the task at hand. Your focus narrows to the precise angle of the cut, the feel of the tool in your hand, the subtle resistance of the wood. It's a welcome contrast to the wide-open, often chaotic energy of the fields. There, You might be wrestling with a stubborn tractor or battling a sudden downpour. Here, the challenge is more internal, a quiet puzzle to solve with each branch. You discover that pruning isn't just about removing, it's about encouraging. By taking away the weak or unproductive parts, you allow the tree to concentrate its energy on the strong, healthy branches, on the promise of future fruit. It's a lesson that feels profound, even applicable beyond the orchard walls. Perhaps that's why this task resonates so deeply with the wartime ethos, a focused effort on what truly matters, shedding the unnecessary to strengthen the essential. The sun climbs higher, and then begins its slow descent, painting the sky with hues of orange and pink. Your hands are sticky with sap, your clothes smudged with bark dust, but there's a sense of deep satisfaction. You step back from a tree you've just finished, admiring its new, more open form. It looks cleaner, lighter, ready to breathe and flourish. You can almost feel the tree sighing in relief. The sheer volume of fruit that Britain needed during the war was immense, and the Women's Land Army played a critical role in ensuring those vital supplies. Fresh fruit, while sometimes scarce, was incredibly important for vitamins and morale. But beyond fresh consumption, a massive effort went into preserving fruit. Think of the mountains of apples turned into applesauce or dried apple rings, the plums and damsons destined for jam, the berries for cordials. Every single piece of fruit you helped encourage on these trees could end up in a jar, on a plate, or even in a soldier's ration pack, providing essential nutrients and a taste of home. This was a mainstream historical fact of the time. The nation's larder depended heavily on domestic produce, and every fruit tree mattered. One day, while you're meticulously trimming a particularly unruly pear tree, the farmer tells you a quirky tidbit about an old local superstition. He says some of the older folk in the village still believe that if you prune a fruit tree on Good Friday, it will guarantee a bountiful harvest. He shrugs, a wry smile playing on his lips. Never done it myself, mind. But can't hurt to have a bit of faith, eh? You wonder if anyone actually tries it, secretly, hoping for an extra bushel of pears. It's a charming, almost whimsical thought in the midst of such practical, vital work. You consider, for a moment, if you should try it next year just in case. After all, if a little superstition helps the nation's fruit supply, why not? As you work, you ponder the broader implications of what you're doing. Historians still argue whether the Land Army's training, particularly in specialized tasks like pruning, was truly comprehensive enough to make them expert horticulturists, or if their primary value lay simply in providing much-needed manual labor. You, standing there with sap on your fingers and a newfound understanding of tree anatomy, certainly feel like you're gaining genuine expertise, even if it's born more of necessity and hands-on experience than formal schooling. You're learning a skill that feels ancient and fundamental, connecting you to generations of farmers before you. The branches you remove pile up, forming small, fragrant mounds on the orchard floor. They'll be gathered later, perhaps for kindling, or just left to decompose and return their nutrients to the soil. Nothing is truly wasted here. You're becoming adept at spotting the 3DS, dead, diseased, and damaged wood, and dispatching them with confident snips. Sometimes, you even find yourself humming a quiet tune as you work, the rhythmic click of the secateur providing the percussion. The farmer occasionally checks in, offering a quiet word of advice or a nod of approval. You appreciate his understated guidance. There's no pressure, just a shared purpose. You're not just a pair of hands, you're an apprentice, learning the subtle language of the orchard. You learn to differentiate between fruit spurs, those short, gnarly little growths that promise future fruit, and the more vigorous shoots. You learn about the open vase shape for apple trees, designed to maximize light penetration, and the central leader system for pears, encouraging upward growth. It's a botanical geometry lesson, taught by nature itself. You even manage a light joke or two yourself. One afternoon, after meticulously shaping a particularly stubborn plum tree, you step back, hands on hips, and declare to the farmer, "There, I think I've given it a victory roll haircut, just like the girls in London." He lets out a hearty chuckle, the sound echoing softly among the trees. Another time, you accidentally prune a branch that was clearly not dead, and you wince, muttering, "Oops, sorry mate, that was meant for the compost heap, not your lovely self." You imagine the tree sighing dramatically. And then there's the ongoing internal debate about whether any tree could truly appreciate the amount of effort you're putting into its future harvest. They better produce some cracking apples after all this, you think, half-jokingly, to a particularly uncooperative branch. As the light fades, painting long shadows across the orchard, you gather your tools. The air grows cooler, and a thin mist might begin to rise from the damp earth. You look back at the rows of trees, now looking lighter, cleaner, more purposeful. They stand ready, waiting for the spring, for the burst of blossoms, and then for the slow, sweet ripening of the fruit. You feel a deep sense of connection to this place, to these silent, living things that you are helping to nurture. Your hands, though tired, feel strong and capable. You've contributed not just labor, but care, precision, and foresight. You've helped ensure that Britain will have its vital share of nature's bounty, one careful snip at a time. And as you walk back towards the farmhouse, the scent of fresh cut wood lingering in the air, you carry with you the quiet satisfaction of a job well done, a contribution made with gentle hands and a focused mind. As the last sliver of daylight clings to the horizon, painting the sky in fading hues of rose and lavender, you feel the day's work finally recede from your muscles. The chill of the evening air begins to creep in, a gentle reminder that the sun has done its duty for another day, and so have you. Your hands, still faintly smelling of damp earth and the woody scent of pruned branches, are stiff but satisfied. You trudge back towards the farmhouse, your boots making a soft, rhythmic crunch on the gravel path. The distant bleating of sheep and the lowing of cows settling in for the night provide a peaceful, if slightly melancholic, soundtrack to your journey indoors. The farmhouse kitchen, when you finally push open its heavy wooden door, is a sanctuary of warmth and the most comforting smells imaginable. It's a sensory hug after the crisp air outside. The air inside is thick with the rich aroma of simmering vegetables, something hearty and wholesome that promises to chase away the last vestiges of the day's chill. A faint whisper of wood smoke from the hearth mingles with the scent of something baking, perhaps a simple loaf of bread or a fruit crumble, a rare treat. The clatter of pots and pans, the low murmur of voices, and the occasional burst of laughter from your fellow land girls already gathered around the large, scrubbed pine table create a symphony of domesticity that is utterly, wonderfully disarming. You shed your muddy boots by the door, exchanging them for a pair of worn but comfortable slippers that feel like clouds after hours on your feet. You hang your heavy work jacket on a peg, brushing off stray bits of straw and soil. A quick wash-up at the communal basin, the cold water a shocking but invigorating wake-up call to your tired hands and face, and then you join the others. The kitchen, usually a bustling hub of activity during the day, now takes on a more relaxed, almost reverent atmosphere. The flickering light from a single oil lamp on the table casts long, dancing shadows on the whitewashed walls, making the room feel intimate and cozy. You slide onto a bench beside Sarah, whose rosy cheeks and bright eyes tell their own tale of a day spent in the fresh air. The table, normally laden with tools or baking ingredients, is now set simply, chipped enamel plates, mugs of steaming tea, and a large, earthenware pot in the center, from which the most tantalizing aroma emanates. It's a stew, of course. It's almost always a stew. But tonight, it smells particularly inviting, thick with root vegetables, carrots, potatoes, turnips, and what you hope is a decent amount of meat, though you know better than to expect anything extravagant. Wartime rationing, you've learned, is a master of culinary minimalism. In fact, a mainstream historical fact you've quickly absorbed is that the average person's weekly meat ration during World War II was often no more than a few ounces, barely enough for a single modest meal, meaning the land girls often relied heavily on the farm's own produce and any livestock they could raise or acquire within strict limits. You watch as the farmer's wife, a stern but kind woman named Mrs. Davies, ladles generous portions onto each plate. She moves with an efficient grace, her movements practiced and economical, a testament to years of feeding hungry mouths. The steam rises in a comforting cloud, warming your face. You take your plate, the weight of the hearty food a welcome sensation. The first spoonful is pure bliss. It's simple, yes, perhaps a little bland by today's standards. No exotic spices here, just the honest flavors of the earth, but it's warm, filling, and utterly satisfying. Your body, after a day of strenuous activity, instinctively craves this kind of fuel. Another day, another delicious mystery meat. You quip quietly to Sarah, a gentle prod at the ever-present ambiguity of the stew's protein content. Sarah giggles, covering her mouth with her hand. "At least it's not another turnip pie," she whispers back, referring to a particularly uninspiring dish from last week that had tested everyone's resolve. It's a small, shared moment of levity, a testament to the way humor becomes a necessary ingredient in challenging times. You find yourself chewing slowly, savoring each mouthful, not just for the taste but for the sheer comfort it brings. It's a far cry from the hurried, distracted meals you might have grabbed in your city life, scrolling through imaginary social media feeds that don't yet exist. Here, the only screen is the flickering firelight, and the only notifications are the satisfied sighs of your companions. The conversation around the table flows easily, a tapestry woven from the day's events. Someone recounts a particularly stubborn cow during milking, another complains good-naturedly about a blister earned from weeding, and someone else shares a letter from home, reading out a snippet about a new baby or a local wedding. You listen, contributing occasionally, but mostly just absorbing the warmth of their voices, the shared understanding that comes from working side by side. It's a peculiar, but wonderful, kind of family you found here. You learn a quirky tidbit from Peggy, who insists that adding a tiny pinch of salt to her tea makes it taste more robust, a practice she swears by but everyone else finds utterly baffling. "It's a wartime secret, darling," she declares with a wink, stirring her mug with an air of profound wisdom. The sounds of the meal are as comforting as the food itself. The gentle clinking of cutlery against enamel, the satisfied sighs, the soft scraping of spoons against plates as everyone ensures not a single drop of the precious stew is left behind. You notice the way the others eat, some quickly, ravenously, others slowly, deliberately, as if trying to prolong the moment of peace. The exhaustion of the day is palpable, a heavy cloak settling over everyone, but it's an exhaustion that feels earned, a good kind of tired. You find yourself stifling a yawn, the warmth from the food and the room making your eyelids feel heavy. Historians still argue whether the shared meal experience, with its communal nature and reliance on often bland, rationed food, was primarily a source of comfort and morale for the land girls, or if it also subtly highlighted the deprivations of wartime and the stark contrast to their pre-war lives. For you, in this moment, it feels overwhelmingly like the former. It's a sanctuary, a moment of collective respite where the burdens of war and the physical demands of the farm seem to melt away, if only for an hour. There's a quiet strength in simply being together, sharing this basic, vital act of sustenance. You watch as Mrs. Davies begins to clear the table, her movements still efficient, but now with a softer edge. You and the others offer to help, a silent understanding of shared responsibility. The washing up is a gentle, rhythmic process. Hot, soapy water, the clatter of plates, the soft swish of a drying cloth. Another small joke is made when Susan accidentally drops a spoon, proclaiming, "Well, that's one way to ensure we don't accidentally overeat tonight." A nod to the ever-present scarcity. The kitchen, once bustling, slowly empties as girls drift off to their beds, their conversations tapering into sleepy goodnights. You linger for a moment, savoring the lingering warmth from the stove, the last vestiges of the day's hearty meal. Your stomach is full, your body is tired, and your mind is starting to quiet. The simplicity of this routine, this shared supper, has a profound calming effect. It's a perfect end to a long day, preparing your body and mind for the deep, restorative sleep that awaits. The last light of the day, after a simple supper shared with your companions, often offers a deceptive calm. The warmth of the kitchen, the low hum of conversation, the crackle of a fire, it all lulls you into a sense of peace. But just beyond the window pane, the British weather, ever the unpredictable maestro, is preparing its next symphony. Sometimes it's a gentle patter that turns into a drumming crescendo on the roof, rattling the old leaded glass. Other times, the wind picks up, a low moan that builds into a mournful howl, making the very timbers of the farmhouse groan in protest. You learn quickly that the weather isn't just a backdrop to your new life. It is your life, dictating every chore, every comfort, every ache. You might wake to the insistent drumming of rain on the window, a sound that promises a day of sodden toil. Or perhaps a biting wind whistles through the ill-fitting frames, carrying with it the scent of damp earth and distant fields, a chill that seems to seep right into your bones before you even throw off the scratchy wool blanket. There's no hitting snooze on the British countryside's alarm clock, especially when that alarm is a gale-force wind threatening to redistribute the chicken coop across the county. You pull on your heavy, practical uniform, the sturdy breeches, the thick socks, the practical tunic, knowing full well that within the hour, much of it will be plastered with mud or soaked through. It's a bit like getting dressed for a deep-sea dive, only your ocean is a muddy field and your prey is a stubborn turnip. The rain, oh the rain. It's not just water, it's a relentless, pervasive entity. It begins as a fine mist that clings to your eyelashes, then graduates to a steady drizzle that slicks the handles of your tools, making them treacherous. Soon enough, it's a proper downpour, fat drops exploding against the fields, turning the soil into a treacherous, sucking bog. You trudge through it, your heavy, laced boots squelching with every step, each footfall a battle against the adhesive power of the earth. The mud isn't just on your boots. It splashes up your breeches, coats your hands, finds its way into every crease and cranny. You learn to walk with a peculiar, deliberate gait, like a seasoned bog trotter, lest you lose a boot, or your balance, to the slurping embrace of the field. And let's be honest, at some point, you probably wonder if your Wellington boots have developed a sentient, mud-dwelling life of their own, given how much they seem to enjoy their current state. Then there's the wind. Oh, the wind. It's not a gentle breeze here. It's a living, breathing force that seems intent on stripping you of every last shred of warmth. It whips your hair into a tangled mess, even under your practical headscarf. It tears at the edges of your uniform, finding every gap, every opening, to send icy fingers crawling beneath your layers. Trying to stack hay in a strong wind is a Herculean task, each forkful threatening to become a giant, airborne tumbleweed. And don't even get us started on trying to light a match for a quick cuppa in a sheltered spot. It's a futile exercise in futility, a testament to the wind's unwavering commitment to making your life just a little bit harder. Your hands, already chapped and raw from the cold and the work, sting as the wind lashes at them. You learn to hunch your shoulders, to turn your back to the worst of the gusts, becoming a small, determined silhouette battling an invisible giant. And the cold. Britain, even in spring and autumn, can deliver a bone-chilling cold that seems to penetrate directly to your marrow. You experience the numb ache in your fingertips as you try to grasp a hoe, the stiffness in your knees as you kneel to weed. On frosty mornings, the ground crunches underfoot, and your breath plumes in white clouds, a visible testament to the frigid air. The tools are icy to the touch, and your hands quickly become red and raw. You learn to appreciate the brief warmth of your own body heat trapped beneath your clothes, a tiny, portable sanctuary in a world of chill. You start to develop an internal thermostat that seems to only register two settings, Arctic and slightly less Arctic. You quickly discover that the standard women's land army uniform, while designed for practicality, often fell short in providing adequate protection against the truly harsh British elements. While you were provided with stout boots, breeches, and a tunic, truly effective waterproofing and insulation for prolonged exposure to severe rain, wind, and cold were often lacking. This is a mainstream historical fact. Land girls often had to supplement their kit with their own clothing, or get inventive. You might find yourself stuffing old newspapers into your boots for extra insulation, or fashioning a makeshift poncho out of a hessian sack, secured with twine, just to keep the worst of the rain off your back. Historians still argue whether the physical toll of constant exposure to the elements significantly impacted the long-term health of land girls, or if their youth and resilience largely mitigated these effects. But in the moment, you're just focused on staying warm enough to feel your fingers. There were, of course, the rare, glorious days of sunshine. Days where the sky was a brilliant, impossible blue, and the sun beat down with a warmth that felt like a blessing. On such days, the fields shimmered, the air hummed with insects, and you could feel the sun soaking into your weary muscles, a balm for the constant damp and cold. But even then, there were challenges. The sun could be deceptively strong, leaving you with a ruddy face and parched throat. Dust, rather than mud, became your adversary, coating everything in a fine, gritty layer. And the work, of course, never stopped. You might be haymaking under a benevolent sun, but you knew that at any moment, the clouds could roll in, and the rain would return, turning your carefully gathered bounty into a soggy mess. You learned to read the sky like an ancient mariner, discerning the subtle shifts in cloud formations, the direction of the wind, the scent of the air, all clues to the weather's next move. A darkening horizon, a sudden drop in temperature, a particular kind of stillness before a storm. These signs become as important as the farm manager's instructions. You learn to work with a quiet urgency when the weather is fair, knowing that every minute of good conditions is a precious gift. And when the heavens open or the wind howls, you simply lower your head, pull your collar tighter, and push on. There's no time for complaint, no room for self-pity. The crops won't wait, the animals need tending, and the nation needs feeding. This constant battle against the elements becomes a strange kind of meditation. The biting wind, the soaking rain, the numbing cold, they strip away the superficial, leaving only the raw essence of you. You discover a resilience you never knew you possessed, a quiet, stubborn strength that emerges with every muddy bootfall, every chapped hand, every shiver. You learn to appreciate the smallest comforts, the warmth of a hot mug of tea cradled in your frozen hands, the brief shelter of a hedgerow, the camaraderie of a shared sigh as a fresh downpour begins. You might grumble, you might even utter a colorful phrase under your breath that would shock your mother, but you keep going. Because that's what land girls do. You face the elements head-on, finding strength and resilience in every storm and chill, knowing that your quiet, unwavering effort is a vital pulse in the nation's beating heart. As the days blur into weeks, and the weeks into months, a quiet but profound shift begins to settle over your daily rhythm. The initial isolation, the stark newness of it all, starts to recede, replaced by a growing sense of shared experience. You're no longer just you on this farm. You are part of us, the land girls. It's a subtle alchemy, this forging of bonds. It doesn't happen in grand, dramatic gestures, but in the countless small moments that make up the relentless grind of farm life. You find it in the shared groan as you all lean into a particularly stubborn patch of earth, the rhythmic scrape of spades synchronizing, a silent understanding passing between you that, yes, this is hard, but we are doing it together. Your muscles ache, but the ache is less sharp when you know the woman beside you feels it too. It's like a collective sigh, released into the morning air, a shared acknowledgement of the physical toll, immediately followed by the quiet resolve to push through. You might catch someone's eye, a flicker of commiseration, a quick, almost imperceptible nod, and suddenly the burden feels a little lighter. Laughter, too, becomes a vital lubricant for the weary soul. And oh, how you laugh. You laugh when someone, usually you, manages to get a prodigious amount of mud splattered across their face while trying to unstick a wheelbarrow. You laugh at the farmer's perpetually bewildered expression when he tries to explain a task for the 5th time, convinced you're all just a bit slow. You laugh at the absurdities of your new life, the defiant chicken that refuses to be caught, the cow with a personality quirk that makes milking an unexpected adventure. One time, after a particularly exasperating afternoon trying to coax a stubborn pony to pull a harrow straight, one of the girls, a quiet one named Evelyn, suddenly burst out with, "Honestly, I think he thinks we're auditioning for a very slow, very muddy ballet." The entire field erupted, and for a few precious minutes, the weariness evaporated into the crisp air, replaced by the sheer, unadulterated joy of shared silliness. It's amazing how a good laugh can unknot the tightest shoulders, isn't it? It's almost as effective as a hot bath, but far more portable. These aren't just workmates, they are your new family. You live together, often in repurposed cottages or dormitories, the sounds of your shared existence becoming a comforting backdrop to your sleep. The gentle creak of floorboards as someone gets up for a drink of water in the night, the soft murmur of hushed conversations after lights out, the clatter of cutlery at breakfast, the rustle of straw in the barn as you prepare for another day. You learn each other's habits, their little quirks. Who snores loudest, who always makes the tea, who can fix anything with a bit of string and a prayer. You hear stories of their lives before the war, tales of bustling cities, sweethearts left behind, dreams put on hold. You share your own, bridging the vast gap between your pre-war self and this new, calloused version of you. One evening, huddled around a crackling fire in the common room, someone starts humming a tune. Soon others join in, and before you know it, you're all belting out the unofficial anthem of the Women's Land Army. Land girls are we, with a hoe and a spade, a useful and healthy life we have made. It's not exactly a chart topper by modern standards, but in that moment, sung off-key with gusto, it's a powerful declaration of identity and unity. This shared understanding, this collective identity as a land girl, creates an unbreakable bond. You are part of something much bigger, a vital cog in the nation's war machine. Mainstream historical fact alert asterisk at its peak. The Women's Land Army numbered over 80,000 women, a veritable army of agricultural workers, ensuring Britain didn't starve. You are one of them, a crucial part of that vast, unsung effort. The common purpose, the knowledge that every turn of the soil, every picked potato, every drop of milk contributes directly to the war effort, deepens these connections. When one of you struggles with a particularly heavy sack of feed, another is instantly there to help, a strong hand on the canvas, a quiet word of encouragement. When homesickness washes over someone, and it does, a quiet sob escaping into the night, there's always a comforting presence, a shared blanket, a whispered reassurance. You share letters from home, passing around photographs of siblings and parents, creating a collective memory of the lives you've temporarily set aside. It's an unspoken agreement. We are here for each other, come what may. Even the most mundane tasks become opportunities for connection. Mucking out the pigsty, for instance. A truly glamorous undertaking, as you can imagine. But with 2 or 3 of you tackling it, the task transforms. There's the synchronized scooping, the grunts of effort, the shared disgust at a particularly pungent patch, and then, inevitably, a joke about which of you smells the most farm fresh at the end of it. It's a camaraderie born of shared grime and common goals. You realize that true friendship isn't just about shared triumphs, it's about shared struggles, too. You find yourselves developing an almost telepathic understanding. A quick glance across the field is enough to convey a message. Are you tired too? Just 5 more minutes, right? Did you see that ridiculous thing the farmer just did? It's a language woven from shared experience, far more eloquent than words. And sometimes, it's the quietest moments that solidify these bonds the most. Sitting together after supper, the only sound the gentle crackle of the fire and the distant hoot of an owl, you might simply rest your head against a companion's shoulder, a silent acknowledgement of the day's toil and the comfort of their presence. No need for grand declarations, just the steady, reassuring warmth of shared humanity. Historians still debate the degree to which these intense bonds, forged in the crucible of wartime necessity, endured once the conflict ended. Did these friendships last a lifetime, or did the return to civilian life, with its old routines and expectations, cause them to fray? For now, though, they are everything. They are your anchor in a world turned upside down. They are the laughter that chases away the shadows of fatigue, the understanding that eases the ache of homesickness. They are the collective strength that allows you to face each new day, each new challenge with renewed purpose. You are not alone. You are part of a sisterhood, a unique sorority of women who traded their city shoes for muddy boots, their delicate hands for calloused palms, all for a cause far greater than themselves. And in doing so, they found each other. You found each other. And as the quiet hum of the dormitory settles into a gentle lull, you drift into sleep, a quiet smile on your lips, warmed by the enduring glow of these friendships, forged not in battle, but in the peaceful, demanding embrace of the land. You stand by the farm gate, watching the lorries rumble away, laden with sacks of potatoes, crates of eggs, and those heavy, clanking milk churns. Just yesterday, those potatoes were nestled in the earth you tilled, those eggs were warm in the nests you collected from, and that milk, well, you know exactly where that milk came from, because your hands ached from the milking. It's a quiet parade, this daily exodus of sustenance, yet as you watch, a subtle shift begins in your understanding. The initial novelty of the countryside, the sheer physical demands of the work, the learning curve that felt steeper than the steepest hill you've ever climbed, all that begins to recede, making way for a deeper, more profound realization. You're not just moving dirt or coaxing milk from a cow anymore. You're not simply performing a series of tasks outlined by a kindly farmer or a stern foreman. No, as the days bleed into weeks and the weeks into months, you start to see the bigger picture, the intricate tapestry into which your calloused hands are weaving vital threads. Each potato dug, each ear of wheat harvested, each liter of milk drawn, isn't just a unit of produce. It's a piece of the nation's resilience. It's a bulwark against the gnawing fear of hunger that stalks the cities, a silent, powerful riposte to the enemy's attempts to starve Britain into submission. Remember those newsreels, the ones that flickered in the darkened cinemas before you came here? They talked of U-boats, of convoys, of the perilous journey across the Atlantic. They spoke of ships sunk, of precious cargo lost to the icy depths. Britain, an island nation, was heavily reliant on imported food, with around 70% of its foodstuffs coming from overseas before the war. The relentless U-boat campaign aimed to cut off these vital supply lines, threatening to cripple the country from within by starving its population. It was a strategy as old as warfare itself, but with modern, terrifying efficiency. You heard the numbers, the grim statistics, but they felt abstract then, distant, like a problem for someone else, somewhere far away. Now, though, as you wipe sweat from your brow, feeling the satisfying weight of a full basket of carrots, those abstract numbers take on a tangible form. You don't just hear about rationing, you understand why it exists. You grasp that every extra cabbage grown here means one less cabbage that needs to risk the perilous sea lanes. Every loaf of bread baked from the wheat you helped harvest means one less grain ship vulnerable to torpedoes. It's a direct, unvarnished connection between your aching back and the survival of millions. You are quite literally feeding the nation. It's not quite as glamorous as being a fighter pilot or a nurse on the front lines, but then again, Nobody ever got scurvy from a lack of daring aerial maneuvers, did they? And let's be honest, the uniform, while practical, isn't exactly haute couture. You certainly won't see it on the cover of Vogue anytime soon, unless they're doing a special issue on mud-splattered chic. There's a quiet pride that settles over you, a deep, resonant hum beneath the daily grind. You might not be marching in parades, or receiving medals, or having your picture plastered on propaganda posters. Well, beyond those initial recruitment ones, which made farm work look suspiciously like a sun-drenched holiday with perfectly coiffed hair. You chuckle to yourself sometimes, recalling those posters, thinking, if only they knew the reality of wrestling a stubborn pig out of a muddy sty, or trying to convince a cow that now is the ideal time for milking, not later, when you're half asleep. But your contribution, though unsung by the masses, is undeniably vital. It's the bedrock upon which the entire war effort rests. Without food, the factories grind to a halt, the soldiers grow weak, the morale crumbles. You are, in your own quiet way, holding up the sky. You see it in the eyes of the farmer's wife when she thanks you for the extra effort during a particularly difficult harvest, her gaze holding a depth of gratitude that transcends mere politeness. You hear it in the hushed conversations of your fellow land girls, as they share letters from home, detailing how precious every ration coupon has become, how ingenious people are getting with recipes to stretch what little they have. Suddenly, that endless field of potatoes doesn't just represent hours of back-breaking work. It represents countless meals, countless families sustained. It's not just about producing food. It's about producing hope, resilience, and the quiet assurance that Britain will not break. Sometimes, during a brief lull, perhaps while you're mending a fence or waiting for a tractor to be refueled, you might pick up a discarded newspaper, its headlines screaming of battles far away, of grand strategies and epic struggles. And then you look down at your hands, grimy with soil, nails broken, and you realize that your battle is fought here, in the quiet furrows of the field, in the relentless rhythm of planting and harvesting. It's a different kind of heroism, one measured not in bravery under fire, but in sheer, unadulterated grit and perseverance in the face of endless, mundane tasks. It's the heroism of showing up every single day, no matter the weather, no matter how tired you are, and doing the work that absolutely has to be done. Did you know that the Women's Land Army even established their own training farms and hostels to help new recruits, like you, get up to speed with the often unfamiliar agricultural tasks? These weren't just places to sleep. They were hubs of practical education, where you learned everything from how to handle livestock to the intricacies of crop rotation. It was a crash course in rural survival, distilled into weeks instead of years, and it speaks volumes about the urgency of the need for skilled labor. You might have scoffed at some of the initial lessons, thinking, surely, I can figure out how to milk a cow without a diagram. But then you remember the first time you tried, and the cow looked more confused than you were. Clearly, the cow had higher expectations for your milking technique. This understanding of your vital role isn't a sudden epiphany, a lightning bolt of realization. Instead, it's a slow, steady dawning, like the sun creeping over the horizon each morning, illuminating more and more of the landscape. It's built on countless small moments, the weight of a seed packet in your hand, the earthy scent of freshly turned soil, the sight of rows of green shoots pushing through the earth, a testament to your labor. It's in the satisfaction of seeing a field you cultivated now brimming with ripe produce, knowing that every single item will contribute to someone's plate. You start to think about the people who will eat this food. Not just the soldiers, though they are certainly paramount, but the factory workers toiling in munitions plants, the nurses tending to the wounded, the children growing up in a world turned upside down. Your work provides the fundamental energy they need to carry on. It's a profound connection, a silent promise delivered with every bushel of apples, every sack of grain. Historians still argue whether the Women's Land Army's contribution was truly the decisive factor in preventing widespread food shortages, or if it merely supplemented other initiatives like increased domestic cultivation and stricter rationing. While the exact quantitative impact may be debated, what is undeniable is the psychological boost and the tangible output that allowed Britain to maintain a degree of self-sufficiency during its darkest hours. Your presence on these farms wasn't just about filling a labor gap. It was a symbol of national unity, of women stepping up to roles previously considered exclusively male, pushing boundaries and proving their immense capability. There's a certain quiet dignity in this work, isn't there? No grand speeches, no medals, just the honest labor of your hands, connecting you directly to the very earth beneath your feet. It's humbling, yet empowering. You might grumble about the aches and pains, the mud, the early mornings, but underneath it all, there's a bedrock of pride. You're doing something undeniably important, something that truly matters. You think of the food queues in London, the carefully guarded ration books, the ingenious recipes people invent to make a little go a long way. And then you look at the overflowing barns, the fields teeming with life, and you feel a surge of purpose. You are part of the solution. You are part of the enduring spirit of a nation refusing to yield. It's a heavy responsibility, but also an incredibly rewarding one. Sometimes you even catch yourself giving a stern, almost parental look to a particularly stubborn carrot as you pull it from the ground. You might whisper, are going to be someone's dinner. No pressure, but you better be delicious and nutritious, because a lot of effort went into getting you here. Don't let me down, little root vegetable. It's a silly thought, but it underscores the deep personal connection you now feel to every single thing you produce. You are not just a cog in the machine. You are an essential, irreplaceable part of the very engine that keeps Britain moving forward. And as the sun dips below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, you feel that understanding settle deep within your bones, a quiet, comforting truth. Despite the relentless rhythm of the farm, the constant demand for your strength and focus, you find yourself slowly, almost imperceptibly, beginning to notice something else entirely. It's not about the heavy crates of vegetables, or the endless rows of tilled earth, or even the persistent ache in your lower back that has become a constant companion. No, it's about the quiet, unexpected pockets of peace, the tiny flashes of beauty that glimmer amidst the daily toil, like forgotten jewels unearthed by your tireless hands. You start to see the countryside not just as a workplace, but as a living, breathing entity, full of intricate details you'd never paused to observe before. Take the mornings, for instance. Before, dawn was simply the signal to rise, a gray smudge against the window pane. Now, as you trudge towards the milking shed, the first fingers of light stretch across the fields, painting the sky in hues of soft rose and lavender. The dew-kissed grass sparkles with a million tiny diamonds, each one catching the nascent sun, and you can almost feel the earth exhaling after its night's rest. The air, crisp and clean, carries the scent of damp soil and awakening blossoms, a fragrance far removed from the city's exhaust fumes and coal smoke. You breathe it in deeply, a simple, pure luxury. And the sounds. Oh, the sounds of the countryside. The chorus of birdsong that greets the sun, a symphony of chirps and trills that seems to swell and recede with the breeze. You start to distinguish individual calls, the cheerful chirrup of a robin, the mournful coo of a dove, the chattering scold of a magpie. Sometimes, when you're out in the fields pulling stubborn weeds, you pause, your gloved hands still, just to listen. The distant bleating of sheep, the lowing of cows in their pasture, the rhythmic clack of a tractor far off in another field. They become the soundtrack to your new life, a soothing, repetitive hum that lulls your mind even as your body works. It's a stark contrast to the clatter and roar of the city, isn't it? Almost like your ears are finally getting a much-needed vacation. Even the most mundane chores hold these small revelations. When you're bent over, weeding a row of carrots, your fingers sifting through the dark, rich earth, you might notice the intricate network of roots, the delicate structure of a tiny sprout, or the iridescent shimmer on a beetle's shell as it scurries away. You discover the surprising resilience of a dock leaf, which, frankly, seems to mock your efforts with its stubborn refusal to yield. You swear this one dandelion has a tiny, smug grin as you try to dislodge its taproot. It's a small, internal joke you share with the earth. Or consider the quiet satisfaction of collecting eggs. You reach into the warm, straw-lined nests, your hand closing around the smooth, warm oval. Each egg is a small miracle, a testament to the simple, cyclical abundance of nature. The gentle clucking of the hens, the rustle of straw, it's a moment of pure, unadulterated peace, a brief respite from the larger, more demanding tasks. You might even find yourself humming a little tune, a forgotten melody from before the war, as you carefully place each egg into your basket. Midday breaks, brief as they are, become cherished opportunities for these small discoveries. You might sit under the shade of an old oak tree, munching on a simple bread and cheese sandwich, and just watch the clouds drift by. They're never the same, are they? Sometimes they're fluffy white sheep, sometimes towering castles, sometimes strange, amorphous shapes that seem to tell their own silent stories. You might spot a darting dragonfly, its wings catching the sunlight like stained glass, or a lazy bumblebee, thick and fuzzy, droning contentedly from flower to flower. It's a moment of pure, unburdened observation, a chance to simply be rather than do. You learn to appreciate the subtle shifts in the light, how it changes throughout the day, casting long shadows in the morning, brilliant and direct at noon, and then softening to a golden embrace as the afternoon wanes. The way the golden hour makes the wheat fields glow like liquid gold, or how the setting sun paints the underside of the clouds in fiery oranges and purples before fading into the vast, inky canvas of night. It's a daily masterpiece performed just for you, if you only take the time to look. For many land girls, this immersion in nature became a profound source of solace and strength. It was a well-documented aspect of their service. Despite the physical hardships, the connection to the land often provided a deep sense of purpose and calm. You find yourself becoming attuned to the smallest details, like the particular way a swallow dips and dives just before a rainstorm, or the specific, almost metallic scent of a thunderstorm approaching. These aren't just observations, they become a new language you're learning, a way to read the world around you. You even start to develop a quirky fascination with the local fungi, spotting various colorful toadstools and mushrooms peeking out from under fallen leaves, marveling at their strange, almost alien forms. It's a secret, quiet hobby, a small rebellion against the monotony of labor. Even the feeling of the elements on your skin, once a source of discomfort, begins to hold a different kind of beauty. The cool touch of a gentle breeze on a warm day, the refreshing patter of light rain on your face, the warmth of the sun soaking into your bones after a chilly morning. You learn to embrace it all, recognizing it as part of the living, breathing world you are now inextricably linked to. It's a wonder you don't grow roots yourself, given how much Earth seems determined to become one with your boots. As the day draws to a close, and you walk back to the farmhouse, your muscles pleasantly tired, you look back at the fields. They stretch out, vast and peaceful under the twilight sky, and you feel a quiet pride. You've played a part in their story today. And in turn, they've given you something back, not just sustenance for the nation, but sustenance for your spirit. The distant hoot of an owl, the rustle of leaves in the evening breeze, the faint scent of wood smoke from a nearby cottage. These are the lullabies of your new life. Historians still argue whether the profound connection many land girls formed with the land during these years was a direct result of the war's demands, pushing them to find beauty in adversity, or if it simply accelerated a pre-existing human inclination towards nature, a deep-seated need for quiet contemplation that the rural setting finally allowed to flourish. Perhaps it was a bit of both. What you know unequivocally is that these moments of simple joy, these unexpected glimpses of beauty, are becoming as vital to your well-being as the food you eat and the sleep you snatch. They are the quiet anchors in a turbulent world, the gentle whispers of peace that remind you, even amidst the echoes of distant conflict, that life, in its simplest, most fundamental form, continues to be beautiful. You're pretty sure that one squirrel has developed a personal vendetta against your lunch, eyeing it with an intensity usually reserved for top-secret military intelligence. But even that little daily battle feels like part of the larger, vibrant tapestry of your new existence. As the dusk settles, painting the sky in hues of soft lavender and fading rose, you find yourself drawn indoors, not to the warmth of your bed just yet, but to the quiet hum of the common room. The day's demanding work has left your muscles pleasantly tired, a deep, satisfying ache that promises sound sleep later. But first, there's another kind of connection to tend to, one that transcends the rolling fields and the immediate camaraderie of your fellow land girls. It's time to bridge the distance, to reach across the miles to the people who are never truly out of your thoughts. Your family, your friends, the echoes of the life you left behind. You settle at a sturdy wooden table, perhaps by the faint glow of a gas lamp, its gentle hiss a counterpoint to the soft scratch of pens on paper. This is a nightly ritual for many, a quiet exodus from the boisterous energy of the supper table to the introspective world of words. You pull out a sheet of paper, perhaps a little thinner than you're used to, a testament to wartime rationing, and unfurl it with a soft rustle. Ah, the luxurious feel of paper, isn't it? Almost as good as a proper cuppa after a long day. If you're lucky, it's not the coarse, recycled stuff that feels like it's already been read by 1,000 people before you even put pen to it. Sometimes you wonder if the ink just evaporates into the rough fibers before it even reaches its destination. You dip your pen, or perhaps you're using one of those newfangled fountain pens, a marvel of engineering that somehow manages to hold its own ink. The nib touches the paper, and the first word flows, a simple dearest mum and dad, or my darling, insert name of sweetheart here if you have one, you sly dog. And just like that, the world shrinks. The vastness of the farm, the enormity of the war, they recede, replaced by the intimate space between your thoughts and the page. What do you write about? You can't tell them everything, of course. Not about the time the tractor nearly bucked you off into a ditch, or the truly spectacular mud fight that erupted after a particularly heavy rain shower last week. And definitely not about how much you miss a proper hot bath. Some things are best left unsaid, to keep worries at bay and spirits high. The censors, too, have a say in what crosses the lines. Any mention of troop movements, specific farm locations, or any information that could be useful to the enemy is strictly forbidden. It's a delicate dance, isn't it? To convey the truth of your experience without giving away any secrets. It's like trying to describe a rainbow to someone who's colorblind, but you also can't mention the colors. Good luck with that. So you focus on the small victories, the everyday rhythms. You tell them about the success of the potato harvest, the plumpness of the new lambs, or the surprisingly good bread the cook managed to bake this week. You describe the beauty of the countryside, the crisp morning air, the way the sunlight catches the dew on the spiderwebs. You might mention a new skill you've learned, like how to properly hitch a plow or identify different types of weeds. Each word is a thread, weaving a tapestry of your new life, a comforting narrative for those who wait anxiously for news. You make sure to include a positive spin, even if your back is aching and your hands are raw. Oh, just a little healthy exercise, really. You might write, knowing full well your hands look like you've been wrestling a badger. The slowness of it all is a stark contrast to how we communicate today, isn't it? No instant messages, no video calls, no frantic group chats sharing memes of grumpy cats. Imagine trying to coordinate a family reunion over wartime letters. Right, so, I propose the third Saturday in August, providing the moon is in alignment with Jupiter and Uncle Reginald hasn't accidentally joined the merchant navy again. It would take weeks, if not months, to confirm anything. Back then, a letter could take days, even a week or more, to travel across the country, especially with the disruptions of wartime. And if it was going overseas, well, you might as well send a message in a bottle and hope for the best. This deliberate pace, however, lends a certain weight to each missive. Every sentence is carefully considered, every word chosen with purpose. You can't just fire off a quick emoji or a voice note. No, you compose, you reflect, you pour a piece of yourself onto the page. The paper absorbs not just the ink, but the quiet longing, the unspoken affection, the resilience that hums beneath the surface of your daily toil. Historians still argue whether the careful curation of these letters, often omitting hardships and focusing on the positive, truly reflected the emotional state of those on the home front or merely served as a coping mechanism for both sender and receiver, a shared illusion of normalcy. One mainstream historical fact that often comes up when discussing wartime mail is the introduction of airgraphs, or V-mail, victory mail, especially for overseas correspondence. These were letters written on special forms, then microfilmed, transported, and reprinted at the destination. This drastically reduced the weight and bulk of mail, saving precious cargo space on ships and planes. It was a logistical marvel, really, allowing millions of letters to traverse the globe, connecting soldiers, sailors, and land girls with their loved ones, even if the reprinted letters were sometimes a little blurry or oddly cropped. Imagine receiving a tiny photo of your letter, then having it blown up. It's like receiving a pixelated selfie from the past. A quirky, fringe tidbit about wartime letters is the ingenious ways people would try to convey messages that might otherwise be censored. Sometimes it was through very subtle codes, like always mentioning a specific, seemingly random object if a particular event had happened. Or, even more subtly, by the absence of something normally mentioned. For example, if a soldier usually mentioned his favorite brand of cigarettes, and then suddenly stopped, it might be a subtle signal that he was in a situation where he couldn't get them, or worse. It was a silent language, understood only by those who knew what to look for, a clandestine conversation happening right under the nose of the censors. Sometimes, people would even write messages in invisible ink, using lemon juice or milk, hoping the recipient knew the trick of heating the paper to reveal the hidden words. Talk about high-stakes secret messaging. No wonder the post office was so busy. As you write, you might hear the soft murmur of other land girls around you, similarly engrossed in their own correspondence. One might be humming a quiet tune, another sighing softly as she thinks of home. The air is thick with the unspoken emotions of separation and longing, but also with hope and determination. You describe the joy of a sunny afternoon spent weeding, the satisfaction of seeing the crops grow, the simple pleasure of a shared joke with your bunkmates. You might even include a tiny, pressed flower you found in the fields, a tangible piece of the countryside to send home, hoping it doesn't crumble to dust before it arrives. You write about the food, carefully skirting around the less palatable aspects. "Oh, the turnip casserole was hearty today," you might quip, knowing full well it tasted like boiled socks. You might even add a little drawing in the corner of the envelope, a tiny tractor or a smiling cow, just to add a personal touch. Because sometimes, a little doodle speaks louder than 1,000 words, especially when those words are being scrutinized by a stern-faced censor in a drab office somewhere. And then, with the last line penned, a final "all my love," or "thinking of you always," you fold the letter with care. The crisp edges meet, and you slide it into the envelope, sealing it with a lick of the gummed flap. The taste of the glue is oddly comforting, a small, mundane sensory detail that anchors you to the present moment. You address it clearly, knowing that every detail matters for its journey. The King's Postal Service, despite the war, is remarkably efficient, a testament to the dedication of the postmen and women who brave air raids and disruptions to deliver these vital lifelines. You carry your finished letter, perhaps along with a few others from your friends, to the designated collection point, a sturdy wooden box or a bag hung by the door. As you drop it in, you feel a release, a small burden lifted. You've sent your thoughts, your love, your news out into the world, a tiny paper boat navigating the turbulent seas of wartime. And now, you can finally allow yourself the luxury of sleep, knowing that a piece of you is traveling homewards, bridging the distance, and carrying with it the quiet strength forged in the fields. The week grinds down, each day a relentless repetition of physical exertion, the sun a constant taskmaster in the sky, or the rain a persistent, cold companion. You trudge through mud, lift heavy sacks, and coax stubborn machinery, your muscles aching, your hands calloused and ingrained with the earth's dark secrets. But then a faint, almost imperceptible shift occurs in the air, a whisper of freedom that starts to hum around Friday lunchtime. It's the subtle change in the farmer's demeanor, perhaps, or the way the other land girls start to eye the clock with a little more longing in their gaze. The promise of the weekend, a sacred, precious jewel in the otherwise relentless crown of your working life, begins to shimmer on the horizon. It's a brief respite, a mere 2 days, but it feels like an eternity of possibility, a chance to reclaim a tiny sliver of the person you were before the war called you to the fields. You almost forget what it feels like to not be covered in mud or the scent of livestock. Saturday afternoon finally arrives, a moment of profound, almost dizzying relief. You shed your work clothes, stiff with dried mud and the faint, earthy aroma of the cowshed, and pull on something clean. Oh, the sheer, unadulterated luxury of clean clothes. It's like being reborn, isn't it? The fabric feels soft against your skin, a stark contrast to the coarse overalls that have been your second skin all week. You might even manage a bath, a truly rare and cherished event, especially if the farm has a proper one, heated with carefully rationed coal. The water, warm and enveloping, washes away not just the grime but also the week's accumulated tension, leaving you feeling lighter, almost buoyant. You soak, perhaps for an embarrassingly long time, until your fingers prune, contemplating the vast emptiness of the upcoming hours where no one will demand you pick a single potato or muck out a single stall. It's a sensation so alien, so wonderfully indulgent, that you almost feel guilty about it. Almost. You've earned this, every single precious drop of it. For some, the weekend means a quiet retreat, a chance to simply be. You might stay in the billet, curled up with a book, perhaps a tattered novel found in a dusty box or a letter from home, reread for the 10th time. The silence, broken only by the gentle creak of the old farmhouse or the distant bleating of sheep, is a balm to your city-tuned ears, now accustomed to the constant cacophony of farm life. You might mend your clothes, patching holes in stockings or stitching up a loose button, a meditative task that allows your mind to wander, unburdened by pressing chores. Or perhaps you simply sit by the window, watching the clouds drift by, a cup of weak tea warming your hands, the simple act of stillness a profound luxury. It's a chance to recharge, to gather your thoughts, to simply exist without the constant demand to do. You might even drift off for a proper afternoon nap, something your body craves with an almost desperate intensity after a week of early mornings and strenuous labor. But for many, the call of the local village is too strong to resist. It's a chance to connect with the wider world, even if that world is just a collection of stone cottages and a single bustling high street. You might walk, a brisk stride that stretches your legs after hours bent over fields. Or if you're lucky, you might borrow a bicycle, wobbling a little at first until you find your balance, the wind whipping through your hair. The journey itself is part of the adventure, a slow unveiling of the rural landscape beyond the farm gates. You pass rolling fields, ancient hedgerows, and cottages with smoke curling lazily from their chimneys, each one a postcard image of pastoral Britain. The air smells different here, less of manure and more of wood smoke and damp earth, a cleaner, crisper scent that signals your escape from the immediate confines of your working week. Arriving in the village feels like stepping into a different dimension. The pace is slower, the sounds softer than the city you left behind, yet there's a quiet hum of activity. The general store, the true heart of any wartime village, beckons with its promise of something, anything, beyond farm provisions. You might peer through the window, hoping against hope for a glimpse of some rare treat, perhaps a bar of chocolate, a true unicorn in these days, or a packet of biscuits. The shelves, of course, are mostly sparse, a testament to the rationing that governs every aspect of life. You chuckle to yourself, remembering the pre-war days when shops groaned under the weight of abundance. Now you're lucky to find a decent spool of thread or a bar of hard soap. Well, at least I won't be tempted to splurge all my hard-earned shillings on frivolous luxuries, you muse, a hint of gentle sarcasm in your voice, because there simply aren't any. You might pop into the local tea room, if one exists and hasn't been repurposed for war work. The aroma of brewing tea and perhaps a faint, tantalizing hint of something baked, likely made with dried egg and ingenuity, drifts out, drawing you in. It's a simple pleasure, a cup of tea, perhaps a slice of plain cake or a scone, savored slowly, each bite a small rebellion against the austerity of the times. You watch the villagers, their faces etched with the quiet resilience of wartime life. There's the vicar, cycling past with his trousers clipped, the postman delivering news both good and bad, and the local women, their shopping baskets clutched tightly, discussing the latest news from the front or the price of eggs. It's a microcosm of Britain, quietly carrying on, adapting, enduring. One mainstream historical fact that often gets overlooked is just how difficult and expensive travel was for land girls. Many were stationed far from their homes, and with petrol rationing and limited public transport, visiting family was a rare luxury, often only possible during official leave periods. So, these local village excursions were often the only way to experience any kind of out-of-farm social life. It underscores how isolated some of these young women could feel, reliant on the camaraderie of their fellow land girls and the occasional village trip for solace and connection. The simple act of walking to a nearby village became a significant event, a mini-adventure. You might meet up with other land girls from your billet or a nearby farm, pooling your limited resources for a shared experience. Perhaps you'll wander to the local church, its ancient stones whispering tales of centuries past, a stark contrast to the raw, immediate demands of the present war. Or you might find yourselves at the village hall, where sometimes a small dance is organized, a chance to kick up your heels, even if the music is just a scratchy gramophone and the refreshments are scarce. These dances were a quirky, fringe tidbit of rural wartime life, often bringing together land girls, local farmers, and perhaps even a few soldiers on leave. It was a chance to forget the war, if only for a few hours, and engage in some harmless flirtation and lively conversation. You might even attempt a clumsy waltz with a sheepish local lad, probably more adept at shearing than dancing, but it's all part of the fun. The social interactions are varied. Some villagers are welcoming, curious about these young women in their distinctive uniforms, offering a kind word or a knowing smile. Others are less so, perhaps resentful of outsiders or clinging to old prejudices. You learn to navigate these subtle currents, to discern genuine warmth from polite indifference. But generally, the shared understanding of wartime hardship creates a bond, a sense of collective endurance. You are all in this together, whether tilling fields or serving tea. Historians still argue whether the wider rural population fully appreciated the immense physical and emotional toll the land army took on its members, or if they sometimes viewed them merely as temporary labor, rather than vital contributors to the national effort. It's a complex tapestry of relationships, woven with threads of gratitude, curiosity, and sometimes quiet misunderstanding. Evenings in the village might involve a visit to the local pub, if it's a welcoming establishment. You won't be having anything strong, of course, drinks are rationed, and your funds are limited, but a glass of cider or a shandy, enjoyed by a crackling fire, feels like the height of sophistication. The air is thick with the murmur of conversations, the clinking of glasses, and the comforting scent of hops and wood smoke. You listen to the local gossip, snippets of news from the front, and the timeless banter of country folk. It's a window into a different rhythm of life, one that has existed for generations, largely untouched by the industrial churn of the cities you once knew. You find yourself feeling a peculiar sense of belonging, a quiet integration into the fabric of rural existence. These weekends, brief as they are essential for your spirit. They are moments of decompression, of remembering who you are beyond the uniform and the farm. You might write letters home, filling pages with descriptions of your adventures, perhaps omitting the bits about the aching back or the particularly stubborn cow. You try to convey the beauty of the countryside, the satisfaction of seeing crops grow, the surprising strength you've found within yourself. You might even draw a little sketch of a lamb or a field, trying to share the visual world you now inhabit. It's a way of bridging the distance, of keeping your loved ones connected to your new reality, even as you grow and change in ways they might not fully comprehend. As Sunday evening draws to a close, a gentle melancholy settles over you. The thought of returning to the fields, to the early mornings and the endless tasks looms large. But there's also a quiet resolve. You've rested, you've reconnected, you've allowed your mind and body to reset. You feel a renewed sense of purpose, a quiet strength that has been carefully nurtured during these precious hours of leisure. You know that the war won't wait, and the nation still needs its food. But for now, as the last rays of sunlight fade behind the distant hills, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, you allow yourself one last, deep breath of the weekend air. You'll be ready for Monday, you tell yourself, as you trudge back towards the farm, perhaps humming a tune learned at the village hall dance. You'll be ready eventually, probably after another cup of tea and a long, long sleep. As the days turn into weeks and weeks into months, you begin to understand something truly profound about this new existence. It's not just about the tasks themselves, the individual acts of tilling or milking or harvesting. No, it's about the grand, slow, majestic dance of the seasons, the way the entire farm breathes in and out with the turning of the year, dictating every single one of your varied tasks. You learn to read the sky not for air raid warnings, but for the promise of rain or the threat of frost. You feel the earth's subtle shifts, its quiet preparations, its joyous abundance, and its sleepy retreat. It's a far cry from scrolling through seasonal updates on your phone, isn't it? Here, the seasons aren't just a background filter, they're the very operating system of your day. Spring arrives, not with a sudden burst, but a gentle, almost imperceptible softening. The air loses its biting edge, replaced by a fresh, damp scent of thawing earth and emerging green shoots. You feel a renewed energy in your limbs, mirroring the burgeoning life around you. This is the season of preparation, of hope, and of endless mud. You spend your days turning over the soil, the rhythmic clatter of the tractor now a familiar lullaby, or perhaps a more manual, back-breaking ballet with a spade. The ground, once hard and unforgiving, now yields with a satisfying sigh, ready to embrace the seeds you carefully sow. Each tiny seed, no bigger than a speck, holds the promise of future sustenance, a tiny act of faith in a world consumed by uncertainty. You are planting potatoes, rows upon rows, feeling the cool, crumbly earth give way beneath your boots. You're also busy with the delicate work of planting vegetables like carrots, peas, and cabbages, ensuring the nation's tables would be well stocked. It's a race against time, a gentle urgency, to get everything in the ground before the weather decides to throw a tantrum. And just when you think you've mastered the art of convincing a reluctant you to cooperate during lambing season, you realize the newborns have already outsmarted you. They're like tiny woolly escape artists, determined to explore every muddy corner of the field, leaving you to chase after them with a sigh and a smile. The farm awakens, and with it, a new layer of your own resilience. Then, almost imperceptibly, spring melts into the long, golden days of summer. The sun climbs higher, lingering longer in the sky, stretching your working hours from dawn until dusk. This is the season of relentless toil, of sweat and dust, but also of incredible satisfaction as you witness the fruits of your spring labor begin to ripen. The fields of wheat shimmer like liquid gold under the midday sun, ready for harvest. The air hums with the buzz of insects and the distant drone of a combined harvester, if you're lucky enough to be on a more mechanized farm, or the rhythmic swish of scythes if you're still doing things the old-fashioned way. The Women's Land Army was absolutely crucial for haymaking, a task that required immense physical strength and coordination, often done with scythes or pitchforks, before widespread mechanization, ensuring enough feed for livestock through the lean winter months. You remember one particularly sweltering day, the sun beating down mercilessly, and you found yourself wondering if your boots were slowly melting into the soil. You wiped the sweat from your brow, feeling the scratch of hay against your arms, and for a fleeting moment, wished for an ice cream vendor to magically appear in the middle of the field. Alas, wishes were for peacetime. Instead, you settled for a swig of warm water and the knowledge that every bundle of hay, every sheaf of wheat, was a small victory against the looming threat of hunger. This is where your strength is truly tested, your muscles aching, your hands calloused, but your spirit surprisingly unbowed. The sheer volume of work during summer is staggering, a never-ending cycle of picking, gathering, and preparing for preservation. Blackcurrants, gooseberries, raspberries. Your fingers are stained purple, your basket overflowing, all destined for jams and preserves that would keep Britain fed when fresh produce was scarce. As the days shorten and the sun casts longer, softer shadows, autumn arrives with a painter's touch, transforming the landscape into a riot of russets, golds, and fiery reds. The air cools, carrying the crisp scent of fallen leaves and damp earth. This is the season of the final, great harvest, a frantic push to bring in everything before the harshness of winter descends. You spend long hours in the potato fields, your hands plunged into the cool, dark soil, unearthing the nobler treasures. It's a messy, muddy business, but intensely rewarding. Did you know some land girls, in their ingenuity, would fashion makeshift waterproofs from old sacks and tarpaulins for potato picking? Necessity, as they say, is the mother of inventive, albeit slightly scratchy, fashion. You find yourself expertly sorting the good from the bad, your movements efficient and practiced. Apples are picked from orchards, their sweet fragrance filling the air, destined for pies and cider. Root vegetables like turnips and parsnips are dug up, stored in cool, dark cellars. There's a sense of winding down, of preparing the land for its slumber. Fields are cleared, livestock are brought closer to the barns, and fences are mended in anticipation of winter storms. You also find yourself doing more maintenance tasks, repairing tools, cleaning out barns, ensuring everything is in order for the quieter, colder months. It's a time of reflection, too, as you look back at the abundance you've helped bring forth. And then winter. The farm falls silent, blanketed often by a hush of snow, or simply chilled by a biting wind that seems to seep into your very bones. The vibrant colors of autumn fade, replaced by muted grays and whites. Your tasks shift dramatically. The frantic pace of harvest gives way to a more methodical, indoor routine. Animal care becomes paramount. You spend more time in the warmth of the barns, mucking out, feeding, and tending to the needs of the cows, sheep, and pigs. The rhythmic sound of shoveling straw, the lowing of cattle, the clucking of hens, these become the predominant soundtrack of your day. You ensure the animals are warm and well-fed, their survival through the lean months directly dependent on your diligence. There's also the endless task of machinery maintenance, cleaning and oiling tools, making repairs that were put off during the busier seasons. You might spend hours in a drafty shed, meticulously sharpening blades or patching up sacks. The days are short, the light precious, and you often find yourself working by the dim glow of lanterns in the early mornings and late afternoons. It's a stark contrast to the endless summer days, a test of your endurance against the elements. Historians still argue whether the WLA's deep immersion in the seasonal rhythms of farming had a greater long-term impact on their personal resilience or on the broader public perception of women's capabilities in traditionally male-dominated roles. You certainly feel more resilient. And sometimes, you find yourself chuckling at the sheer absurdity of it all, standing ankle-deep in freezing mud, trying to coax a stubborn pig back into its pen, wondering if your fingers will ever regain feeling. But even in the coldest, bleakest days, there's a quiet satisfaction in knowing you are keeping life going, keeping the farm ticking over, ready for the promise of spring once more. You have become intimately connected to this cycle, a living part of the land's heartbeat. You understand now that your toil isn't just about individual tasks, but about harmonizing with the profound, ancient rhythm of the earth itself. Every ache, every triumph, every moment of quiet observation has woven you deeper into the fabric of this essential, timeless work. Section 17. As the days fold into weeks, and weeks into months, a curious shift begins to settle over you, a quiet transformation that steals in almost unnoticed, like the soft morning mist over the fields. The distant echoes of war, once a constant, nagging thrum beneath the surface of daily life, start to recede. They don't vanish entirely, of course. How could they? But here, amidst the ancient rhythms of the land, they become just that, echoes. Faint, diffuse, like the memory of a dream upon waking. You find yourself increasingly enveloped by the immediate, the tangible. The urgent clamor of headlines and radio broadcasts, the grim tally of losses, the strategic maneuvers discussed in hushed tones, all of it seems to belong to another world, a bustling, anxious place that is not here, not now. Here, the most pressing concerns are the health of a calf, the temperamental whine of the tractor engine, or whether the rain will hold off long enough for the hay to dry. It's a strange, almost surreal bubble you inhabit, a pastoral paradox where the fate of nations feels less immediate than the health of a potato crop. The sounds of the farm become your new soundtrack, a symphony of purpose that gently drowns out the cacophony of conflict. You hear the lowing of cows, a contented, rumbling sound as you guide them to the milking parlor, their warm flanks brushing against your overalls. You hear the rhythmic clack-clack-clack of the hens foraging in the yard, a surprisingly soothing percussion section to your morning routine. The wind, ever present, whispers through the tall grasses, a soft, undulating sigh that carries no news of distant battles, only the scent of damp earth and growing things. Even the occasional distant rumble isn't a bomb, but more likely a farmer's tractor on a neighboring field, a reassuring sign of shared toil. It's quite the upgrade from the city's endless siren song, isn't it? You almost miss the charming urban symphony of screeching trams and vendors yelling about turnips, but then a particularly fragrant waft of freshly turned soil reminds you exactly why you don't. In the evenings, when the sun dips below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of soft orange and deep violet, the true quiet descends. Under the wartime blackout regulations, which were designed to make targets invisible from the air, the countryside becomes profoundly dark. There are no streetlights, no illuminated shop windows, just the immense, velvety canvas of the night sky, studded with an impossible number of stars. You step outside sometimes just to marvel at it, to breathe in the cool, clean air. It's a darkness that feels protective, not menacing. It's a cocoon, and in that profound quiet, with only the rustle of leaves or the hoot of an owl for company, you truly feel disconnected from the world at war. It's a far cry from the constant digital notifications that plague modern life, isn't it? No endless scrolling through grim headlines here, just the infinite, silent scroll of the Milky Way. Your hands, once perhaps soft and unaccustomed to such ceaseless labor, are now calloused, strong, and deeply familiar with the textures of the land. You know the cool, damp feel of freshly dug soil, the rough bark of an apple tree, the bristly resistance of a potato plant as you pull it from the earth. Each task, no matter how repetitive, carries with it an inherent purpose. When you bring in a basket of eggs, you know they will feed a family. When you pull a stubborn weed, you know you are making space for life-sustaining crops. When you milk a cow, you know that nourishing milk will reach tables across the country. This tangible, immediate impact of your work provides a profound sense of solace. In a world where abstract, unseen forces dictated so much, the movement of armies, the rationing of goods, the constant threat of air raids, your daily life here is a testament to direct action and visible results. You see the seeds you planted sprout, you watch the crops ripen, you witness the animals thrive under your care. This direct connection to the cycle of growth and sustenance is a powerful antidote to the feeling of powerlessness that often accompanies wartime news. You are not just a cog in a vast, distant war machine. You are a vital, living part of the land itself. News from the front, when it arrives, often comes filtered and delayed. Perhaps a newspaper, several days old, makes its way to the farm, or a letter from home carries snippets of what's happening in the cities. These reports are often discussed briefly, perhaps over supper, but they rarely linger. The immediate demands of the farm always pull your attention back. A cow has wandered, a fence needs mending, tomorrow's planting schedule needs careful planning. The sheer physical exhaustion at the end of each day also plays its part. Your body, tired but fulfilled, craves rest, not anxious rumination on geopolitical strategies. You're too busy dreaming of a comfortable bed to worry about the Maginot Line, after all. One mainstream historical fact that underscores this feeling of detachment is the sheer geographical isolation of many British farms during World War II. While cities and coastal areas were under constant threat of bombing raids, many rural communities experienced a relative quiet, even as the war raged on. The land girls, often billeted on these remote farms, found themselves in pockets of peace that felt worlds away from the urban centers where the war's presence was far more visceral. It wasn't just a mental distance. For many, it was a very real physical one, making the echoes truly distant. And for a quirky, perhaps fringe, tidbit that highlights the farm's unique wartime reality. Due to the severe rationing of fuel, many farms in remote areas reverted to much older methods of transport and power. Horses, once thought to be largely replaced by tractors, saw a significant resurgence. You might find yourself leading a team of heavy horses, guiding a plow through the soil, a task that would have been common a century earlier, but was now a necessity born of wartime scarcity. It was a step back in time, even as the world outside hurtled forward into a new age of mechanized warfare. This reliance on traditional methods further grounded you in the timelessness of agricultural life, making the modern world and its conflicts feel even more remote. Historians still argue whether the perceived isolation of rural life truly shielded individuals from the psychological toll of wartime news, or merely reshaped how that stress manifested. Was it a genuine sanctuary, a true escape, or did the quiet simply amplify the anxieties that still existed, albeit in a more subdued form? For you, however, in the moment, it feels like a genuine haven. The quiet doesn't amplify anxiety, it soothes it. The purpose you find in your daily chores is a balm, a constant reminder that even in the midst of global upheaval, life continues, food must be grown, and the land demands its due. You discover simple, profound joys that had perhaps been overlooked in your previous life. The taste of a freshly picked apple, still warm from the sun. The satisfaction of a perfectly straight furrow. The sight of new lambs gambling in the spring fields. The camaraderie with your fellow land girls, a bond forged not in shared trauma, but in shared effort and quiet triumphs. These small, everyday miracles fill your days, leaving little room for the grand, terrifying narratives of war. It's a life stripped down to its essentials, and in that simplicity, you find a surprising richness. You might even find yourself contemplating a career as a professional cow whisperer, though you suspect the market for that is rather limited. The war is still out there, a vast and terrible force, but here on this patch of British soil, you are actively creating peace. You are cultivating life, not destroying it. You are feeding a nation, not fighting one. And as the final light of day fades, and you drift into a deep, well-earned sleep, the distant echoes of conflict are finally, completely, silenced by the quiet strength of the land beneath you and the profound purpose you have found within it. The distant echoes of war have faded, replaced by the quiet hum of a world slowly, tentatively finding its peace. You are no longer rising with the dawn to milk cows or wrestling with a stubborn tractor in a muddy field. The uniform, once your daily attire, has been carefully folded away, a tangible memory of a time that transformed you utterly. Yet, as you settle into the soft embrace of your bed tonight, a profound sense of accomplishment washes over you, a quiet strength that has been forged in the very fields you once toiled upon. You close your eyes, and the memories aren't just pictures, they are sensations. The cool, damp earth clinging to your boots as you prepare to seedbed, the rhythmic pull of the milking machine, the satisfying thud of a freshly dug potato hitting the basket. Your hands, once soft and unblemished, bear the indelible marks of hard work, calluses that tell a silent story of resilience. You might even find yourself absent-mindedly checking your fingernails for traces of soil, a habit that probably won't disappear for decades, much like your sudden, inexplicable urge to identify every passing tractor by its engine sound. Honestly, who knew you'd become such a connoisseur of agricultural machinery? The war ended, yes, and the immediate crisis of feeding a nation began to recede, but the impact of your service, and that of nearly 200,000 other women, who joined the Women's Land Army throughout World War II, was profound and lasting. You weren't just growing carrots, you were growing a new understanding of what women were capable of. Before the war, many of these roles were strictly, almost exclusively male domains. Suddenly, women were not just filling roles, they were excelling in them, often under incredibly challenging conditions. You remember that little jolt of pride you'd get when a local farmer, initially skeptical of your abilities, would grudgingly admit you were quite handy with a plow for a lass. It was the highest praise you could hope for, delivered with all the enthusiasm of a badger trying to solve a crossword puzzle. You think of the sheer variety of tasks you mastered. One day you were lambing, the next you were driving a lorry full of sugar beet, and the day after that you might have been battling a particularly aggressive patch of bindweed that seemed to have a personal vendetta against productivity. You learned to read the sky like an ancient mariner, predicting rain by the way the wind shifted, and you developed an almost supernatural ability to spot a ripe strawberry from 50 paces. Who needed a crystal ball when you had mud on your boots and a good sense of impending weather? There's a subtle, almost imperceptible shift in the air as you recall the camaraderie. Those shared suppers, the laughter echoing in the dormitory, the collective groans over a particularly early start. You formed bonds that transcended social class or background, forged in the crucible of shared purpose and physical exertion. You didn't just work alongside each other, you leaned on each other, literally and figuratively, when the going got tough. And let's be honest, sometimes the going got so tough you wondered if the universe was just having a giggle at your expense. Like that time the prize bull escaped and led you on a merry chase across 3 counties, leaving a trail of bewildered villagers and slightly traumatized chickens in its wake. Good times. Your service, though often unsung in the grand narratives of battles and political maneuvering, laid critical groundwork for post-war Britain. The land army ensured that the nation didn't starve, that the fields remained productive even as men were called away to fight. This sustained agricultural output was a quiet, constant victory, a testament to the fact that wars aren't just won on the front lines, but also in the humble fields and farms back home. It's fascinating, really, how such enormous national effort could be so profoundly rooted in the rhythmic, repetitive tasks of daily farm life. One of the more quirky aspects of your time, which often gets overlooked, was the sheer resourcefulness required. You learned to mend torn sacks with surprising dexterity, to fashion makeshift tools from whatever was at hand, and to stretch rations further than seemed humanly possible. There was even a brief, rather ill-fated attempt by one of the girls to make potato coffee, which, let's just say, proved why coffee beans have held their monopoly for centuries. It smelled like ambition and regret, mostly regret. Historians still argue whether the Women's Land Army truly paved the way for permanent shifts in gender roles in the workplace, or if the post-war return to more traditional roles was simply an inevitable societal pendulum swing. But for you, and for countless others, the experience was undeniably transformative. You had proven your strength, your capability, and your resilience in ways you never would have imagined possible. You had learned to trust your instincts, to solve problems on the fly, and to appreciate the profound satisfaction of honest, hard work. You had gone from perhaps dreaming of a life behind a shop counter to mastering the land, and that knowledge, that deep-seated confidence, never truly leaves you. Even now, years later, you find traces of that land girl within you. A sudden desire to plant something, anything, in a patch of earth. A keen eye for weather patterns. An enduring respect for the sheer effort that goes into producing the food on your plate. You carry the smell of rich soil, the feel of hay in your hair, and the sound of a tractor's distant thrum within your very being. It's part of your personal history, a chapter written not in ink, but in sweat and sunshine, and the quiet determination of a young woman who answered a call to duty. The war is over, the immediate need for your specific service has passed, but the legacy of your quiet strength, your unwavering commitment to the land and to your country remains. It's etched into the very fabric of who you became. And as you feel the gentle pull of sleep, you understand that this indelible mark, this profound sense of purpose, is a far more precious metal than any ribbon could ever convey. You drift, now, not just into sleep, but into the peaceful knowledge of a life well lived, a contribution made, and a legacy quietly, powerfully etched into the earth itself. The soft hum of distant memories begins to fade, like the last whisper of a summer breeze through an open window. Your breathing deepens, slowing, becoming a gentle, steady rhythm. The images of green fields and open skies soften at their edges, blurring into the comforting darkness behind your eyelids. You are no longer tending to the crops, no longer battling the elements, no longer hearing the clatter of the milking parlor. Those sounds, once so vibrant and immediate, now recede into the quiet, still corners of your mind. Let the last lingering thoughts of the earth beneath your hands, the warmth of the sun on your skin, and the quiet satisfaction of a day's honest work gently dissolve. Feel the soft weight of the blankets, the gentle support of your bed, as if the very earth itself is cradling you. There is nothing left to do, nowhere left to be, but here, in this moment of perfect stillness. Allow your muscles to release their last vestiges of tension, your mind to quiet its final whispers. You are safe, you are warm, and you are utterly at peace. The quiet strength you cultivated in those fields now serves as a gentle anchor, pulling you deeper into a calm, restorative slumber. Let yourself go, completely, into the deep, welcoming darkness.